Egyptian mythology. The daily life of the god of the desert. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Isis's embarrassment. In the temple built of giant trees and flowers, Seth walked in quickly, but did not see Osiris and Isis. "Where did you go?" Seth muttered to himself and decided to wait. While waiting, Seth took out a roasted whole wolf. He bought it for a silver coin when he passed an oasis on the way here and smelled the fragrance. He took down a roasted wolf leg and ate it while waiting. Not long after, Osiris and Isis walked in from outside the temple with a smile. They saw the servants given their true names by Seth and knew that Seth had arrived. After swallowing the last bite of wolf meat in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, Seth stood up and said, "Brother, sister, where did you go?" Osiris smiled helplessly. "It's about human sacrifice. 2 tribes fought and competed to come to me for blood sacrifice, wanting me to destroy the other tribe. It took me some time to mediate the feud between them. It's too troublesome." Seth felt a headache when he heard it. If he was asked to handle this matter, he would definitely watch indifferently. War helps him to strengthen his authority. "Humans are too aggressive," said Isis. Osiris pulled Seth to sit down and said, "Ra will not always let us protect humans. When the underworld needs enough dead souls, we don't have to worry about them." Maybe. Seth didn't want to continue this topic and said, "Try the roasted wolf meat. Is it made by humans?" Isis tore off a piece of leg meat and asked. "Yeah." Seth nodded. "They are very good at using compound spices. Delicious." Osiris gave his evaluation after tasting it. Seth took out the pottery jar containing moonlight wine and smiled. "This is the wine that Best gave me. Try it." As he said that, Seth opened the mud seal on the pottery jar. The breath of cold moonlight floated out, and a silver moon appeared in front of Seth again. After a moment, the silver moon disappeared. Osiris asked curiously, "Brother, what kind of wine is this?" "Moonlight wine, brewed by the moon god." Seth explained, "This is the first time I've heard of it. Bring me a glass." Isis said with a smile, "No problem." Seth agreed readily and took a cup of silver moonlight wine for Isis. Then it was Osiris's cup, and finally Seth. Then, the 3 of them drank the moonlight wine together. Seth felt a sharp liquid sliding into his throat. It had the mellow aroma of wine and the taste of the moon. Yes, the taste of the moon. It was indescribable, but after drinking it, the mind would automatically equate the taste with the moon. Then there was a hazy feeling, and a soft and erratic feeling. After a moment, all the feelings dissipated. Seth's eyes lit up. He fell in love with this wine. "It tastes good," Osiris said loudly. Isis's beautiful eyes were full of satisfaction. "It feels very different." As she said that, Isis tore off a piece of wolf meat and ate it. The satisfied look became more obvious. Seth also ate a piece of meat. The charcoal-scented roasted meat, mixed with strong spices, was the opposite of the taste of moonlight wine, but it made the meat taste better. After taking 3 more cups of wine, Seth took advantage of Osiris and Isis not drinking, and said, "I came here this time to discuss something with you." "What is it?" Isis put down the ceramic cup and asked with concern. Osiris quickly swallowed what he wanted to say. Not long ago, he asked Thoth to share some sun wine, but was rejected as a matter of course. Without sun wine, Osiris was embarrassed to tell Seth about things that would undermine his authority. Who would have thought that Seth would come by himself and bring such delicious wine? Originally, I thought the atmosphere was just right, so I told him about the matter. "Nephthys matter," Seth said seriously. "Nephthys came to me some time ago. She brought a jar of wine and said she brewed it herself. She wanted me to taste the wine she brewed. But, I sensed the breath of Apep in the wine. But there is no problem with Nephthys' breath. I suspect Nephthys may have Apep's blood or scales, and is using them to do something bad, hide some irrelevant details. For example, he lied to Nephthys that he was seriously injured and introduced the gods to her, and Nephthys asked where Beth was, and then cried and begged. If the details are erased, it will not be embarrassing. The foreshadowing of the wine is to avoid Osiris and Isis asking about details. Apep? Osiris was shocked. This is not a trivial matter. We must go to Nephthys immediately. If the situation is serious, we must take her back to Heliopolis." Isis's expression was a little embarrassed. She coughed and said, Set, I know what the wine you were talking about is. Set was confused. So was Osiris. Seeing this, Isis was even more embarrassed, but still explained. Apep holds the power of chaos. His scales are also stained with the breath of chaos. When a god eats his scales, he will fall into a brief state of chaos and excitement. I discovered it by accident when I was studying magic. I made 2 jars of wine by accident, one of which I gave to Nephthys. Hearing Isis deliberately emphasize the pronunciation of the word excitement, Set understood. Then he felt a chill on his back. The breath of Apep in the wine is very secretive. If he had not merged a drop of Ra's blood, he would not have been able to detect it at all. If he had been moved by Nephthys' tears and drank the wine at that time. Silence. Set was afraid. Isis blushed slightly, a little embarrassed. Osiris thought of a certain night when his green skin turned red. After a long time, Set took a sip of moonlight wine and said, "Sister, don't make that kind of wine anymore in the future. It's not safe." "Yeah," Isis responded awkwardly. "With such an episode, it is really not suitable to continue drinking." Seth left behind half a pottery jar of moonlight wine, and left with 3 cups of moonlight wine. Before leaving, Seth said, "Sister, leave some for Nephthys to taste." "Got it," Isis responded. It was already dark when they left the temple of Osiris. A crescent moon hung high in the sky, and the stars twinkled. Seth blew the wind, and the embarrassment in his heart was much less. There was no way. Nephthys' wine was too unexpected for him. Seth took out the remaining moonlight wine and took a sip. "Seth." Suddenly, Seth heard someone calling his name. "Stop." Seth patted to go. The giant yellow sandbird hovered in the air. Seth looked around, and there was no living creature. The shouting just now did not appear again. "Ago, did you hear someone calling me?" Seth asked his servant. "Master, no." Ago shook his head. Seth frowned. Could it be haunted? But he didn't see any dead spirits. The divine power spread out, covering 100 miles around. There was nothing unusual. "Let's go back to the temple," Set said. Chapter 27 Isis's desire. Gods don't hallucinate. Set knows this. On the contrary, under the cover of his divine power, he can still hide himself perfectly. That means danger, and Set doesn't want to get involved in danger. However, Set mobilized the 3 powers to transform almost infinite divine power. As long as there is a slight change, whether the owner of the voice can survive depends on whether he can resist. However, the voice seemed to know that Set was waiting for the opportunity to take action and did not appear again. The giant yellow sandbird left that area smoothly. Set remained vigilant and thought about the future. The bloody river and best, Apep, the mysterious voice, Kebnut who ascended to the rank of the main god with 1 level of authority. They made Set realize that the 3 powers are not safe enough to face all dangers. He needs to be stronger, preferably to become the strongest main god under the supreme god Ra. However, the road to strength is blocked. Authority is both the foundation and the limitation. Set sighed. The desert, power, and war gave him almost infinite divine power, making him the main god, but it was also because he was the embodiment of the 3 powers. Whether it was the desert or the power, he could control it perfectly as long as he wanted. Because of perfection, there was no way to go further, unless he had power beyond the 3 powers. Seth thought about it and decided to tell Ra that the Book of True Names still existed. In this way, he proposed to Ra to give him new authority. However, before that, Seth decided to look for the Blood River again. Reporting the Book of True Names to the Supreme God was a bad idea. The best way to maximize the benefits was to blackmail the Book of True Names in the name of Ra. In the east of the sky, darkness gradually faded. Isis stood in the air, filled with the stench of Apep. Sekhmet was on the side. She recalled the heroic figure of Ra killing Apep just now. She longed more and more for one day to kill Apep herself. Isis had no time to care about Sekhmet. She took out a round bottle cut from rubies. Staring at the horizon, there was light and heat. The sun was about to rise. Sekhmet suppressed the desire to fight in his heart and looked at Isis curiously. In the past, Isis would leave quickly after her shift. Speaking of which, Isis was late for her shift this time. Suddenly, A ray of light pierced through the darkness and shone on the horizon. Isis used her divine power to protect the ruby bottle close to the light. At the moment the light shone on the bottle, the ruby bottle shone with lines of scratches, forming tiny circular patterns. A force that did not belong to the transformation of power burst out. When the strange power subsided, a ray of sunlight appeared in Isis's ruby round bottle. Seeing this, Isis excitedly took back the ruby round bottle and sealed the bottle mouth with divine power. "Is that the power of magic?" Sekhmet asked curiously. Isis put away the ruby bottle and smiled. "Yes, I'm studying some uses of magic. Just now it was a magic circle that can store and gather magical power and then burst it out when needed. Once humans learn it, they should be able to quickly become powerful." "Indeed," Sekhmet agreed with Isis. After a brief conversation, Isis opened the door of God and left. However, she did not return to the temple of Osiris. Instead, she came to the temple deep in the twisted forest. Although Isis has been living with Osiris, she has also built her own temple, a temple built entirely of blooming 7-color flowers. Isis first washed off the fishy smell on her body and changed into a green long skirt and a water lily-shaped wedge. Then she took out her own ankh and covered the temple with divine power. Make sure that no one exists and can spy on her silently. After doing all this, Isis took out a ruby bottle containing a ray of rising sunlight. Looking at the sunlight in the ruby round bottle, Isis's eyes were full of desire. After staring at the sunlight for a long time, Isis lowered her eyes to the ground. She held the ruby round bottle in one hand, mobilized her divine power, and cut a wound on her other hand. The blood full of life fell and dripped onto the temple floor. A sturdy, huge golden seedling broke out of the soil and quickly grew taller. Watered by the blood of the god of life, it grew into a blooming golden flower in the blink of an eye. In the center of the flower, half of it was engraved with complex divine patterns. It was dim and the material was unknown. A human head-sized disc was quietly sitting in it. Isis took a look, opened the sealed ruby round bottle, and dripped dozens of drops of blood into it. Then healed the wound on her hand and said seriously, "I, Isis, give you life." The next moment, the sunlight melted into the blood. The blood full of life gradually turned golden. After a while, there was only golden liquid in the ruby round bottle. Seeing this, Isis poured the liquid onto half of the disc. Instantly, the divine patterns on the disc seemed to come alive, swallowing up the golden liquid. After the golden liquid was completely swallowed, the divine patterns turned into a simple human face. "A ray of sunlight at the beginning of the day is only worth one question from me," the human face said. This scene was strange and unusual, but Isis had no expression on her face. She looked at the human face and said seriously, "I want to get the power of the sun." "Haha." The human face sneered, "Are you crazy? With your ability, it is pure wishful thinking to want to get the power of the sun." Isis ignored the mockery of the human face and said, "Help me, or I will hand you over to Ra. If you hand me over, you will die too." The human face sneered, "I know Ra too well. He will not let you live. You will not abandon your beloved Osiris, as well as your brother and sister." "Isis, threats are the most useless." Listening to the mockery of the human face, Isis admitted that what the human face said was right. She could not bear the worst consequences of handing over the disc. However, she longed for the power of the sun. After 1,000 years of imprisonment, Isis was not satisfied with the power that could not crush the sky and the earth. She needed a more powerful power to protect Osiris, her brother and sister. "But I also want the power of the sun." The human face suddenly changed the subject. "I can help you get Ra's real name. With the real name, you are equivalent to having the power of the sun. Although you don't own the sun, you can use the power of the sun. There is a difference, but it's not big. Besides, the power of the sun is supreme. Just being able to use it is enough to make you stand above the gods." Hearing this, Isis asked the question she had asked many times again, "Who are you?" "A loser." The human face replied lightly, "Losers don't deserve to have a name." "So, Isis, do you want to be a loser or a winner?" Isis was silent for a moment, and said, "Tell me what to do." Happy New Year! If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Sobek. Back in the temple, Seth placed the Ankh on top of the temple. The divine power unique to the desert permeated and blessed the entire temple. Seth stood under the Ankh and merged with the desert. Consciousness and vision spread out like flowing water without dead angles. Monsters, humans, oases, gods, all were seen clearly by Seth. Time passed little by little, and Seth searched for the blood river. The sun and the moon rotated alternately, and a month later passed in the blink of an eye. Seth was disappointed again. He still didn't find the blood river, and Best, who usually teased humans in the oasis, didn't show up either. This made Seth consider a possibility. Was the blood river found by Best and taken away by her? After all, Best's goal was the blood river. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this possibility was very high. But Seth couldn't verify it. He had previously told Best that he would no longer participate in the blood river. He also told Best that he was injured by the blood river. If Best found the bloody river and took it away, the book of true names hidden in the river would most likely tell Best the truth. After the lie was exposed, Best might not tell him the truth, or simply ignore it. Thinking of this, Seth planned to regain consciousness and tell La about the book of true names. Suddenly, Seth heard a voice calling him. This voice was exactly the same as the one he heard under the moonlight before. Seth immediately became alert. The desert, like Seth's mood, set off sandstorms. But, just like last time, Seth saw nothing. There was no suspicious existence on the desert, unless it was not in the desert. Seth cast his eyes to the boundary between the desert and the forest. A tributary of the Nile River flows in the lush and dense forest. Flowers bloomed under the trees. A rabbit ran over, and redfish jumped out of the water. Compared with the endless desolate desert, the forest is full of life. Seth learned the lesson of the bloody river and did not rush over rashly. Suddenly, the voice sounded again. This time, Seth determined the source of the voice. It was a tributary of the Nile River, and the call came from the river. The yellow sand gathered and roughly condensed into the image of Seth. Wearing an okapi crown and a skirt, Seth of the yellow sand opened his mouth and said, "Agong." A giant bird of yellow sand condensed. Master, Agong landed on the ground and shouted respectfully, "Destroy that tributary of the Nile River," Seth ordered. Yes, Agong agreed without hesitation. Then it flew to the tributary in the forest and hovered. Cry. After a loud cry, a dense rain of sand fell over the tributary. As a servant given a true name by the god of the desert, it can also drive the desert. Soon, Seth saw that the flowers, plants and trees near the tributary were covered with a layer of yellow sand. The call did not appear again. Seth frowned. Did he run away? All the tributaries of the Nile River are connected to the Nile River. However, Seth did not sense any breath of God from the tributaries. Even when he was called just now, there was no breath of God. Of course, there was no breath of monsters or humans. In short, there was no intelligent being in the tributary that could call out the name. So, what was calling Seth? Suddenly, the voice sounded again. The source was still the tributary. But at this moment, the tributary was completely filled with yellow sand. The giant yellow sand bird had landed beside Seth, waiting for the master's instructions. "Who are you?" Seth opened his mouth and asked in the direction of the tributary. When asking this question, Seth did not expect the other party to answer. But, apart from that, he didn't know what to say. "Sobek," the voice replied. After getting the answer, Seth was surprised at first, and then silent. Among the gods of the city of Heliopolis, there was no god named Sobek. No, whether the thing in the river is a god is still a question. But, if it is not a god, could it be another evil god born of faith? However, there was no breath of evil gods in the tributaries. One guess after another appeared in Seth's mind, but was rejected by Seth. "Come to Fayum to find me." Suddenly, the voice said again. Seth remained silent. The sudden voice was likely a trap. In addition, he had never heard of Fayum. "Seth, come to me, I can make you stronger." The voice was a little hurried. Seth remained silent. "I am your brother, I will not lie to you," the voice said again. Hearing this, Seth's mouth twitched. Kebun Nut gave birth to the stars, and there were 4 of them. They were Osiris, Isis, Him, and Nephthys. When did they give birth to another Sobek? And he was his brother. Why should he be a younger brother? Set was unhappy and said, "You are lying. My brother is Osiris. Come to Fayum, brother, I will give you a kind of authority." The voice said a little vaguely. This made Set's heart move. The new authority was exactly what he longed for. "What authority?" Set asked. However, the voice did not answer again. Set waited for a long time, but still did not hear the voice speak again. "Are you still there?" Set shouted towards the tributary. There was still no response. Set frowned. It seemed that the voice had really disappeared. Sobek. After mumbling the name, Set dispersed the real name given to Agong. It was best for him to know about Sobek. Even though the servant would not betray the master, its existence itself was evidence that it could speak. Then, Set filled the surroundings with divine power, covering the previous divine power, and then gathering consciousness and vision, returning to the body. In the yellow sand temple, Set slowly opened his eyes and let out a long breath. After a month of blending into the desert, he was a little tired. Walking to the throne and sitting down, Set relaxed his body and thought about what had just happened. Fayum, Sobek, and new authority. Pie in the sky? No, it was more like a bad thing. Giving God new authority is something that only the Supreme God can do. The main gods, upper gods, and lower gods cannot do this, because authority is the foundation of one's own existence. If it is false, it means that this is a trap that lures him with power. On the other hand, if it is true, it is even more terrifying, an existence comparable to the Supreme God. After thinking about it, Set only felt that it was very dangerous. He thirsted for power, but he would not seek death, especially when the other party lied that he was his brother. At first glance, he was a skilled liar who pretended to be a relative and tricked people into killing him. After defining Sobek, Set decided to go back to Heliopolis. He wanted to tell Ra that the Book of True Names still existed. He hoped that the Supreme God would be more generous and give him new authority. Chapter 29, Human Authority. After calling back Ankh, Set opened the Gate of Gods to Heliopolis. Passing through the Gate of Gods, one could see the magnificent city engraved with the sun god pattern, and the road outside the city that was empty of gods. There should not be many gods in the city, but Hathor must be there. With his thoughts spreading, Set walked slowly into the city. Ra patrolled the underworld during the day, and fought with the demon snake on the earth and under the sky at night. Before the fight, Ra would return to Heliopolis, leave the underworld chariot behind, and drive the 10,000-year ship instead. All Set had to do was wait at the 10,000-year ship. After entering the city, Set was ready to walk towards the Pantheon. Hathor came from the other side of the city and stopped him. Set, wait a minute. Perfect face, perfect head-to-body ratio, perfect clothes. Even if it was not the first time he saw Hathor, Set would still admire her beauty. "Are there any newly cultivated seeds to be handed over?" Set asked. "No." Hathor shook her head and said, "Let's talk in my temple, okay?" It was morning now, and there were still more than 10 suns before Set agreed. In addition, he was a little curious, what did Hathor want to talk to him about? Seeing that Set agreed, Hathor smiled and led the way in front. Passing through the temples of the lower gods and the upper gods, it is the temple of the main gods. Hathor's temple looks as perfect as her. The proportion of the stone pillars, the arrangement of the engraved divine patterns, and the matching of the paintings. The inside of the temple is like a house built by humans in the oasis. There are complete tables, chairs, benches, green plants, and pottery jars for storing water. Set was a little surprised, but not surprised. After all, Hathor loves humans, and it is normal for the temple to be arranged like this. This also reminded Set of the secrets about Hathor that even Thoth didn't know. If he asked Hathor now, would she tell him the ancient secrets? Wine. Hathor placed a glass of wine in front of Set. Seth's thoughts were pulled back, and he said, "Can I tell you now?" Hathor showed hesitation on his face. This made Seth even more suspicious. What exactly was going on? After a long while, Hathor no longer hesitated, and looked at Seth sincerely. "Seth, I want you to give up 70% of the desert territory." Hearing this, Seth was stunned. He had thought about what Hathor would say, but he didn't expect Hathor to ask him to compromise his own authority. However, Seth did not get up and leave immediately, but asked Hathor, "Why did you make this request?" Authority is the foundation of God, and it is also God's taboo. Hathor made this request for no reason, and he wanted to know whether there was God behind it. The desert is not suitable for human survival. Hathor sighed and said, "The upper gods and lower gods are afraid of you, so they dare not use their own power to truly protect humans." Even Osiris did not use his power with Isis to turn the desert into a plain. If they did that, the number of humans would increase by 1,000 times and 10,000 times in a few decades. Set listened quietly. Hathor glanced at Set and said, "God Ra convened a divine council to increase the number of humans, so that the underworld can revive and grow into a real world. This is the oracle of God Ra and cannot be changed. The gods are now considering you, but they have already asked you to convene a divine council. The result of the divine council must be that you give up most of the desert territory." Set did not deny Hathor's words. In fact, Set knew that Ra sent down an oracle asking the gods to protect humans and increase the number of humans on a large scale. Whether the gods are willing or not, they will obey and do this. He has been waiting to kill the chicken to scare the monkey, but there is actually another meaning. That is to force the gods to find another way. Just like Osiris researched new wheat varieties to increase the grain yield in the desert, instead of directly turning the desert into a plain, other gods can follow suit. The best result is that his power loss can be ignored. At the same time, the number of humans will increase on a large scale. But no one among the gods has stepped forward and wanted to hold a divine meeting. He was too naive and underestimated the gods. However, he was asked to give up his power on his own initiative. Set smiled bitterly. "Thank you for your advice, Hathor, but voluntarily giving up 70% of the desert territory." Set didn't say the rest, but Hathor understood. Hathor sat down, took out the ankh, and used divine power to protect the temple, saying seriously, "Seth, you must give up on your own initiative." "Why?" Seth looked at Hathor with a puzzled look on his face. Hathor said it was a request, but her words didn't sound like she was asking him for anything. It was more like Hathor, as a sincere friend, making a sincere persuasion. This was also the reason for Seth's confusion. He and Hathor had only met 3 or 4 times. The only time they talked was when she asked him to pass on the seeds last time, and this conversation. They are not even ordinary friends, let alone close friends. Hathor's eyes showed a little sadness when he heard this. The god Ra wants to increase the number of humans in order to revive the underworld. When the underworld no longer needs humans, you want to take back the desert territory, and the gods cannot refute it. By then, the plains will become deserts, and humans will die and be injured countless times. At this point, Set understood. He also understood why Hathor said it was a request, even though she was clearly analyzing the pros and cons for him. "You want me to never take back the desert territory?" Set said affirmatively. Hathor looked ashamed, but still nodded vigorously. "Yes, I can't do it." Set refused directly. In fact, Set felt very aggrieved now. But he was powerless, because now he stood on the opposite side of the gods. Even if Isis, Osiris, and Nephthys supported him, he could not fight against the gods. "I can help you get new authority as compensation." Hathor was not surprised by Seth's refusal, she said. When Seth heard this, he felt like he had seen it before. Yes, the secret existence who called himself Sobek also told him that he could give him new authority. Seth wanted to say the 3 words "I don't believe it," but when he said it, it became, "What authority?" "Human," Hathor said seriously. "Human." Seth repeated the word unconsciously. Then Seth searched the fused memory and found that there was indeed no human god among the gods. There were gods such as the snake god Wajet and the red fish god Lihas. Correspondingly, there should be human gods. Yes, the authority of man. Hathor's eyes flashed with a trace of pain, and said, "After you have it, the increase in the number of humans is the increase in your power, enough to make up for the 70% of desert territory you lost." Seth was moved, but he asked the decisive question, "Will the god Ra give me the authority of man?" Only Ra can give gods new authority, and Seth knows this very well. Chapter 30 Him, No need. Hathor said, "I don't need Ra to give it. The power of man is not in the hands of Ra. Only I know where it is, and only I can help you get it." Seth looked at Hathor, the god of beauty, love, and music. Again, there was no expression on her perfect face. Unable to see anything, Seth stopped looking and nodded. I need this power. Upon hearing this, Hathor smiled. I will help you get the power of man. How to do it? Seth asked. In the water of the Nile River, there are ruins of a town called Fayum, Hathor said. Fayum? Seth interrupted Hathor and repeated these 3 words in disbelief. Hathor nodded. Have you heard of Fayum? Seth shook his head and skillfully changed the subject. No, I'm just shocked why there is a town in the Nile River. It wasn't the Nile River before. Hathor's eyes showed nostalgia, but it quickly disappeared. In the center of Fayum, there is a corpse of a man. Take out his heart, and that is the authority of man. As long as you swallow it, you can merge the authority of man, but you have to take this with you. As she spoke, Hathor took out a clay statue. It was a clay statue of a young girl, and Hathor's divine power was attached to it. Seth took the clay statue, put it away, and then said to Hathor, swear to God Ra to prove that you are not lying. Why did Kebnut force them to swear? Because if you make an oath, you must obey it, otherwise, you will die because of breaking the oath. Similarly, an oath can prove the truth. However, God will not make an oath easily. No one wants his eternal life to end on an oath. Hathor took back the ankh and faced the direction of the sun. God Ra is above. Hathor swears to the sun that I did not lie about obtaining the authority of man. As soon as the words fell, a ray of sunlight shining into the temple turned into a golden ring and wrapped around Hathor's left wrist. Then, the golden ring quickly disintegrated, as if it had never existed. Seeing this, Seth was relieved. If Hathor's oath just now was a lie, then she would die under the oath. This is the location of Fayum. Hathor handed Seth a piece of papyrus. Thank you. Seth took the papyrus and said, if I get the authority of man, I will keep the promise you want me to make. I believe you will. Hathor showed a perfect smile. Then, Seth left Hathor's temple. He wanted to get the authority of man as soon as possible. As for telling Ra about the Book of the True Name, put it aside for the time being. After all, even if he said it, Ra might not give it. Walking out of the city, Seth opened the gate of God and successfully returned to the temple. Then, Seth immediately went to the location of the Nile on the papyrus. Of course, Seth did not forget Sobek. He did not intend to go to find Fayum in his true body. In the swamp near the forest, a magnificent temple suspended in the air exudes the breath of God. Suddenly, a white bird flew into the temple. On the golden throne of the temple, Shu, the god of order, sat on it and gently touched the white bird that flew in front of him. Instantly, the bird disintegrated into a series of sacred texts. Shu took a quick look and then dispersed the divine power attached to the sacred texts. At this time, Tefnut, the god of disorder, walked in from outside the temple and said, I saw the letter from the white bird god. Shu was a little helpless. Just like other upper and lower gods, they don't dare to use their divine power to change the desert landscape. And, Seth has been blending with the desert recently. That makes the gods even more afraid to take action, for fear of being targeted by Seth. I understand that little guy Seth. Tefnut walked to Shu and said, he was seriously injured by Apep and hid in the temple for decades. If it weren't for the powerful authority, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to wait for the blood given by Ra. Changing the desert is equivalent to weakening his power. Of course he has to intimidate the gods and not allow them to take action. Shu sighed and said, I understand him too. However, the oracle of Ra cannot be violated. The gods are expressing their dissatisfaction to me now, just to let me convene a divine council, then vote through the divine council to make Seth give in. After all, Seth can't openly violate the oracle and go against the gods. Then are you going to convene a divine council? Tefnut asked. No. Shu shook his head and said, I'll go talk to Seth. It's best if he takes the initiative to cooperate. If he refuses, then we can only call a divine council. Tefnut leaned on Shu's shoulder and urged, go, but don't be too strict. Yes. Shu nodded and said, where are Keb and Nut? Are they still busy with the stars? Don't worry about those two stubborn people. Tefnut was instantly angry. Shu saw that Tefnut was angry, and he was helpless and stopped talking about their two children. The sky temple on the top of the mountain, Nut stood in the temple, facing the direction of the sun, and sang loudly, praise you, God of Ra, You are the king of the gods and the master of all things. We come from you and become gods because of you. Your believers come out to greet you at dawn, cleansing their hearts with laughter. The sacred wind blows through your golden strings with music. At sunset, they sacrifice to you. Every day, from your wings, the colors reflected in the sky flash. You sailed past the zenith, your heart rejoiced. Your boats of morning and evening were guarded by the gods. Before you, Mot lifted up her feather of truth, and the temples of the gods roared with your name. Ra, perfect, eternal, only. Great falcon that flies with the rising sun, on the green fig tree, your image, ever young, gleams across the sky. Your light illuminates every face, yet no one knows it. For thousands of years, you are the eager source of new life. Time rolls up the dust under your feet, but you remain unchanged. Creator of time, you have transcended all time. You pass through the closed door behind the night, and make the souls that lie in sorrow rejoice. Truth in language, stillness of heart, arise and drink your light, for you are yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Praise you, Ra, who awakens life from its slumber. You rise, shine, and show your glorious image. Millions of years have passed, and we cannot count them one by one. Millions of years will come, and you will shine for 10,000 years. Keb did not know when he would arrive, and he listened quietly, not finished singing and shed tears. Betrayal made her feel uneasy after all, and this method was the only way to relieve it. God Ra will understand us, Keb said. When Medeus has life, we will tell God Ra everything. Chapter 31. Into the river. Seth stood still above the desert bordering the tributaries of the Nile. He was waiting for the mysterious voice that called himself Sobek to appear. However, Seth waited for a day, and the voice did not appear. This made Seth feel at ease, because he did not want to talk to Sobek. If the voice of Sobek appeared in the tributaries here, he would leave immediately and look for another tributary. Fortunately, there was no voice of Sobek. Seth took out the bronze ankh and injected divine power into it. The three auras of desert, power, and war intertwined in it, and then slowly dissipated and gathered in front of Seth. After a long time, the dissipated aura condensed into the shape of a vague person. Seth cut his palm with divine power and smeared the divine blood on the ankh. Then he stuffed the entire ankh into the heart of the vague person formed by the aura. The next moment, the ankh burst out with powerful divine power. The aura of the three powers intertwined, condensed, and quickly turned into the appearance of a human. A moment later, a replica of Seth, wearing an okapi crown, white hair and golden eyes, wearing a blue and white skirt, and an eagle-headed wezek, appeared. Seth looked at the clone up and down. It looked exactly like him in appearance and breath, and with the divine power provided by Ankh, it had enough power to possess some of the divine power. The real body was hidden in the desert, and Seth attached his consciousness to the clone. After a short period of adaptation, he flew to the tributary of the Nile River. He wanted to pass through the tributary and then enter the Nile River. Wrapping himself with divine power, Seth fell into the tributary of the Nile River. This tributary was wide and deep enough. Seth rushed upstream, and the creatures in the river hid. An oasis in the desert. A caravan of more than 300 people arrived. The patrol soldiers of the tribe living in the oasis carefully looked at the caravan that came, but they found that they were all strangers. The caravan basically only traveled in the familiar tribal oasis. They all put safety first. After all, there were monsters in the desert that hunted humans. In addition to being a mature caravan opening up a new trade oasis, the strange caravan might also be hired by the hostile oasis to target them. The tribal warriors speculated on various possibilities until they saw a dozen strong men protecting a girl. The girl had a pattern of a golden wheat ear painted on her forehead, and she was holding a statue of a god. In an instant, the tribal warriors breathed a sigh of relief. A caravan blessed by God usually means that there is a powerful tribe behind it. Even if it is not, it is a tribe that is rapidly becoming stronger. After all, with the blessing of God, no one wants to conflict. However, the tribal warriors do not envy them. They are a tribe blessed by the Lord God of the desert. In the center of the oasis, in a wide building built of stones, a young man wearing a blue skirt and a yellow sand pattern painted on his forehead sat and looked through the tribal trade records recorded on papyrus. At this time, A middle-aged man with a hideous scar on his shoulder walked in. "Lord Damses, the believers of the god of agriculture have arrived." The middle-aged man saluted respectfully and said, "Yeah." Damses nodded slightly and didn't care. Ever since their tribe was blessed by the great Lord God of the desert, many tribes that were also blessed by the gods took the initiative to come to make friends. "My lord, they also brought wheat seeds given by the gods." The middle-aged man said again, "What's the use of the wheat seeds of the gods?" Damses put down the papyrus and asked, "Those people said that the wheat seeds will not reduce production due to weather reasons." The middle-aged man replied truthfully. Hearing this, Damses was delighted. "Exchange some seeds with them. Then let the magicians in the tribe plant them immediately." "They don't exchange." The middle-aged man looked strange and said, "They only send." "Is there a problem with the seeds? Or do they have other requirements?" Damses asked with the joy on his face disappearing. "Neither." The middle-aged man shook his head. "They said it was an oracle. The god of agriculture asked them to send this seed that will not reduce production to all the tribes in the desert." Damses frowned and said, "Take the seeds. Then tell the tribe that I was praised by the desert god when I prayed." "So we have to hold a tribal celebration to celebrate this happy event?" "Yes." The middle-aged man nodded vigorously. "Also, keep an eye on the tribe. If anyone leads them to believe in other gods, arrest them and keep them for the next living sacrifice." Damses said coldly, "By the way, inform Carver to train new warriors." "As believers of the Lord Desert God, we cannot tolerate the existence of oases that do not believe in the Lord Desert God." "Yes, I know." The middle-aged man looked serious and turned away. Damses smiled at this time. The seeds of the god of agriculture should be real. With enough food support, plundering more oases will not be a problem. At the same time, as long as they believe in the Lord Desert God, as priests selected by the Lord Desert God, they will not be betrayed. Praise the great Lord Desert God. In the Nile River, Seth walked at the bottom of the Nile River. To be honest, the depth of the Nile River was beyond Seth's expectations. After all, in his impression, the Nile River would not be very deep. However, he entered the Nile River from a tributary and walked to the bottom of the Nile River. It was confirmed that the Nile River was about 50,000 meters deep. There is no light here, and the common creatures in the Nile, such as hippos, crocodiles, and red fish, do not exist. In other words, there are no creatures at the bottom of the Nile. There is only the mud at the bottom of the river, the bones of various creatures after death, as well as sunken ships, stones and other things. As Seth walked, he compared the location given by Hathor. When he chose the tributary, he specially chose the tributary close to the location given by Hathor. So, Fayum should be nearby. "I hope everything goes well," Seth muttered. From the time he entered the tributary to the time he entered the Nile, Sobek did not appear. However, Sobek asked Seth to find him in Fayum. The authority of man is also in Fayum, and he is very worried about encountering danger. Suddenly, Seth felt that something had changed. Looking up, the surroundings were still pitch black. There was still the flowing river water, the bones half buried in the mud, the wreckage of the ship that broke at the touch, and other unchanging scenery. Seth stood still, and he realized that something had changed, that it was the river water around him. The water at the bottom of the Nile River was cold, but now the surrounding water was warm and comfortable. Even this comfortable feeling was increasing. The ink on Seth's chest radiated divine power, completely isolating all the river water. The moment the river water was isolated, that strange feeling of comfort disappeared without a trace. Mobilizing divine power, after carefully exploring the surroundings, Seth confirmed that there was nothing. There was no power in the river water. Unable to find the reason, Seth no longer struggled. He was just a clone, and his only goal was human authority. Chapter 32, Ruins of the Platform. After recomparing the location given by Hathor, Seth rushed forward quickly. But soon Seth stopped. The surroundings changed again, but it was not the river water, but the scenery at the bottom of the river. The broken walls were covered with green water plants, and a human-like skeleton was surrounded by broken pottery jars and bones of animals. These made Seth realize that he came to Fayum. Seth looked at the ruins at the bottom of the river and sighed for a moment. The once prosperous city was buried at the bottom of the river. In addition to sighing, Seth was also alert to Sobek who might appear around him. After all, according to Sobek, he was in Fayum. As he walked, Seth saw more ruins. Stone bricks that were mostly covered by the silt at the bottom of the river, collapsed stone walls, obsidian spears, gems that had lost their color, a large number of bones. There were even traces of magic inscriptions. Seth was surprised, not because of magic. After all, magic existed at the beginning of creation, but magic did not glow with power until Isis was born. But Isis bound the power of magic. What surprised him was that the glowing stone slab created by magic was still emitting a faint white light. In the dark riverbed, this little light was particularly strange. Seth frowned, walked around the glowing stone slab, and continued to move forward. Slowly, Seth felt something was wrong, because, apart from the various ruins, pottery, weapon debris, etc., those relatively intact bones still maintained their movements before death. Like what he just saw, several skeletons were sitting by the wall to rest. Next to the skeleton on the left was a broken pottery jar, which contained an unknown thing that had rotted into a ball. There were also adults and children walking on the street, holding hands with two skeletons. Skeletons patrolling with weapons, selling things, playing. In addition to human bones, there were also bird bones. It seemed that they died in an instant, so that they maintained their movements before death, instead of running away in panic or being killed by weapons. At least Seth did not see the remains of weapons in the bones of that skeleton. God's punishment. Seth said what he thought. Only God could kill these people in an instant. It seems that Fayum was destroyed by divine punishment. Seth became more and more curious. Why did the ancient city destroyed by divine punishment have the authority of God? What is the connection between Hathor and this city? All kinds of speculations appeared in Seth's mind, and then he suppressed them all. Now is not the time to think about these things. It is better to get the authority of man as soon as possible. Seth quickly rushed to the center of the ruins of the entire ancient city. A high platform made of gold with countless complicated divine patterns engraved on it made Seth stop. There are reasons why Seth stopped on his own initiative, and there are also reasons why he felt blocked. It is the power emitted by the divine patterns on the golden high platform that is preventing him from moving forward. Seth controlled himself to float up so that he could see the situation on the high platform clearly. However, the high platform was shrouded in a layer of fog and nothing could be seen. Seeing this, Seth mobilized divine power to merge into his eyes. The golden pupils emitted a faint light. If it was the real body, Seth would not have to go through so much trouble, but this was a clone. With the blessing of divine power, the fog slowly dissipated in Seth's sight. A corpse appeared without any cover. Just as Seth was about to see the corpse clearly, the fog suddenly burst out and covered the corpse. Then no matter how Seth urged his divine power, he could not see the situation on the platform again. Since he could not see it, Seth did not plan to look, but walked to the top of the platform. Ank's divine power burst out, and the surrounding river water was forced back, revealing a vacuum zone. Seth walked forward, but after 2 steps, he could no longer move forward. The golden platform burst out with a powerful force to stop him. What Seth was concerned about was that there was the breath of the sun in the power of the golden platform. No, it should be the breath of Hathor. Seth had touched the seeds cultivated by Hathor, and those seeds contained the breath of the sun. The power that blocked his progress now also contained the same breath. If his real body came, he could break this power. Thinking of this, Seth planned to take out the pottery statue of the girl given by Hathor. Both of them have the breath of Hathor. If the golden platform senses it, it should not stop him again. You can't get in. Suddenly, a voice sounded. The Ankh on Seth's heart burst into the breath of triple authority. The powerful force once again forced back the surrounding river water. A larger vacuum zone appeared. My dear brother, don't be so nervous. The voice sounded again. It was the voice of Sobek. Seth quickly found the source of the voice. A palm-sized golden crocodile was swimming slowly. With the real body, Seth raised his hand and slashed it with divine power. The crescent-shaped divine power split the golden crocodile into 2. However, The golden crocodile quickly connected again. There was no bleeding, no death. Seth frowned. "Brother, why did you hit me?" "It hurts," the golden crocodile said dissatisfiedly. The word brother made Seth's mouth twitch. The next moment, a hand made of the mud at the bottom of the river grabbed the golden crocodile and squeezed it hard. The crocodile turned into meat paste and resurrected the next moment. Seeing this, Seth didn't believe in evil and changed his method to kill the golden crocodile. "You can't do this to your brother." The golden crocodile was dissatisfied and protested. In response, Seth ignored it and continued to kill. "Brother, he doesn't have a crocodile brother. He does have a brother who has green skin and holds the power of plants, agriculture, and abundance." "It hurts," the crocodile that was crushed by divine power and resurrected again shouted. The response he got was to be dismembered again. After repeating the process of dying and resurrecting again for 500 times, Seth looked ugly. At this moment, he felt a little sympathetic to Ra. Facing a resurrected ghost, no matter how he killed, it was useless. This feeling was really very powerless. However, after the resurrection of the underworld, Ra had a way to completely kill Apep. How should he kill this golden crocodile? The golden crocodile that had come to Seth shouted angrily. "Annoying brother, are you stupid?" Seth looked at the crocodile and asked him seriously, "Are you Apep's child?" Apep was the only one who could be resurrected continuously. Bah! The crocodile was very excited after hearing this. "You are the child of Apep, then who are you?" Seth asked when he saw it rejected him. "Sobek, your brother," the golden crocodile answered unhappily. Seth was already immune to this answer. He also understood that this golden crocodile would not tell the truth, so there was no need to ask further. Moreover, he had just killed it while testing its power. The final conclusion was that this golden crocodile was useless except for the unknown power that made the golden crocodile immortal. However, the corresponding vigilance should still be maintained. Chapter 33 Sobek's Mother. Seth was going to take out the pottery statue of the girl given by Hathor and try to see if he could open the blessing of the golden platform. However, the golden crocodile next to him was staring at him. This made Seth feel very strange, and Seth was wary of this guy. So Seth did not take out the pottery statue. Instead, he looked at the little crocodile and said, "Do you know what privacy is?" The golden crocodile shook his head. "I don't know." It would be strange if he didn't know. Seth looked at the golden crocodile, whose eyes were rolling around and was obviously lying, and silently added in his heart, "Brother, do you want to open the blessing guarding the corpse?" The golden crocodile asked with a smile without waiting for Seth to say anything. "Do you have a way?" Seth raised his eyebrows. The golden crocodile grinned even more. "Of course, I can easily break the blessing here." "Then break it." Seth pretended to be unbelieving and said impatiently. Seeing Seth's look, the golden crocodile was unhappy. "You wait." After that, the golden crocodile rolled twice on the spot. Seth found that the size of the golden crocodile had become a little bigger. "Mother, please help me open the blessing of the platform in front of me," the golden crocodile said devoutly while lying on the mud. The next moment, a strange force swept towards the golden platform. The blessing containing the power of Hathor disappeared in an instant. Seth stared at the golden platform, trying to feel the strange power. However, he could not feel anything. It was as if the power had never appeared. However, the disappearance of the mist above the golden platform proved that the power did appear. Seth looked at the golden crocodile still lying on the bottom of the river, and flashed to the body on the golden platform, wearing a white and gold linen skirt, with a pure gold wedge on his neck. He had handsome features. This was the appearance of the corpse. After Seth looked at it, his eyes fell on the hands of the male corpse folded on his abdomen. On the hands of the corpse lay the body of a golden flying bird. The flying bird body was filled with the strong breath of Hathor's divine power. It was Hathor who used divine power to keep the corpse from decaying, Seth thought, and reached out to take out the heart of the male corpse. He did not encounter any resistance. The heart was bright red, without corruption or odor. Most importantly, the heart was filled with the breath of pure divine power. As Hathor said, "This is authority, the authority of man." With the new authority in hand, Seth could not help but laugh. At this time, the voice of the golden crocodile came over. "Brother, I advise you not to merge this authority first. It is cursed." Putting the heart away, Seth looked at the golden crocodile vigilantly. After merging the authority, you are no longer Seth, but the dead Amon. The golden crocodile said seriously. Seth, who was originally going to ignore the words of the golden crocodile and leave quickly, frowned and asked after hearing this, "Who is Amon, the first man in the world?" The golden crocodile said, stretching out his claws and pointing to the corpse on the golden platform, "He is Amon. If you merge this authority, Amon will devour you and gain a new life." This made Seth silent, and he carefully sorted out the things about the authority of man. The final conclusion was that what the golden crocodile said was indeed possible. He saw Hathor's preference for humans. What happened to humans at the beginning of the creation that led to their punishment from God? These were ancient secrets that he didn't know. However, it was entirely possible that Hathor plotted against him to resurrect the first person. There were also loopholes in the oath Hathor made before, because he could indeed get the authority. Of course, in addition to Hathor lying to him, there was another possibility. That was that the golden crocodile was also lying to him, and there was no problem with the authority. Moreover, Seth didn't think he would be devoured by the triple authority over the authority of one person. However, the matter of human authority involved secrets. Seth couldn't bet on whether there was a problem with the authority, nor could he bet that it really couldn't devour him. If he bet wrong, it would be fatal to him. These gods have so many tricks in their minds. Seth sighed and looked at the golden crocodile. "What do you want to get by telling me this? There is no good without a reason." Seth understood this sentence. The golden crocodile observed the changes in Seth's expression, and it naturally guessed some of Seth's thoughts. "Brother, I won't plot against you, don't worry, but our mother needs you. Can you tell me who you are and who our mother is?" Seth stared at the golden crocodile. The golden crocodile grinned and said, "I am Sobek, your brother." "Mother is mother, the mother who gave birth to you and me." This was the answer of the golden crocodile, and Seth was speechless. If Seth had not been afraid of the power of the mother mentioned by Sobek, he would have definitely caught the crocodile and beat him up every day. He always took advantage of him verbally. However, this guy couldn't be killed, and it seemed that there was not much difference between beating it and not beating it. Thinking of this, Seth was too lazy to entangle anymore, and turned around to leave. Sobek flashed to stop him and said, "Wait, I haven't finished talking yet. What nonsense do you have to say? Just say it," Seth said perfunctorily. "It's not nonsense. It's about our mother," Sobek retorted with a grin. Seth had no expression on his face. Seeing this, Sobek snorted and said, "When you recover your memory, you will know that you are wrong." "Yes, yes, yes, yes," Seth said expressionlessly. Sobek's eyes were red with anger, and he was ready to bite Seth. Seth didn't care. Sobek had no power except immortality. Bite him? Even if this was a clone created by Ankh, it was enough to break Sobek's teeth. In the end, Sobek didn't bite him, but just gritted his teeth and said, "Mother needs you to kill Apep and bring back his body." Hearing this, Seth looked at Sobek like a fool. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Sobek calmed down a little and became angry again. "Apep," Seth looked at the fool Sobek and said, "Apep, the demon snake, do you think I killed him, or did he kill me?" Even the sun god Ra couldn't kill that snake. Besides, that guy has no body, and he disappears every time he dies. When he was on duty to assist Ra, he saw Apep's death more than once. Every time he died, his huge body would dissipate like mist. Sobek sneered, "So you're worried about this, brother?" Mother has already thought of a solution. That is the power of man. As long as you integrate the power of man, the power generated by human faith will no longer be poisonous to you. Accumulate enough power of faith, and you can break Apep's immortality. The power is given to you, you integrate it, Seth said, taking out the power of man. Looking at the power in Seth's hand, Sobek snorted. "I can't integrate the power of man, and the curse on the power of man has not been removed." Chapter 34, Clearing the Curse. Seth put the heart away and sneered, "You also know that it cannot be integrated." "I thought you forgot what you said." Sobek said before that after integrating human authority, he would be replaced by Amon, the first man in the world. Now he is asked to integrate human authority again. Isn't that harming him? Sobek was choked by these words, opened his mouth and didn't say a word. Seth didn't leave. He was waiting. waiting for Sobek's explanation. No, it should be said that Seth is waiting for Sobek to give a method to safely integrate human authority. Seth has seen the power of faith, although it relies too much on believers and is not as strong as authority. However, the amount of faith is huge, especially now that the number of humans is increasing. The amount of faith power generated by humans in the future may be equal to his current triple authority. He wants to get this power of faith. At this time, Sobek calmed down and explained, "There is a way to remove the curse on human authority. You take the human authority into the underworld, find the reed marsh in the underworld, then take out the human authority, and the reed marsh will wash away the curse on it." Silently noting this method, Seth asked, "Was the curse on human authority cast by the goddess of love Hathor? What happened to Fayum in the first place? Why didn't Ra take this authority away?" Seth was curious, and he wanted to know the whole story. Then he went to find out what Hathor said. Then he threatened Kebinut with the authority of life to tell about Fayum. By comparing the three parties, it can be concluded who lied the most. Correspondingly, whose words are the least trustworthy. The curse was jointly made by Hathor and Amon. Sobek recalled, their passionate and intense love. Add to that the power of Hathor's love and the power of human faith. Finally, after Amon's death, this curse was formed. If you devour and merge the power of a person, you will be devoured by the power of a person. The dead Amon replaces the god who was devoured and is reborn. Love between man and God. Various legends about love between man and God that are intolerable by heaven flashed through Seth's mind. So, was Fayum punished by God because of love between man and God? And the destruction of Fayum was because Amon did something that angered the current sun god. Sobek continued to answer Seth's question. Because you were in love with Hathor, you angered her? Seth continued. Sobek was stunned and denied, "It can't be the thing. It's a very secret thing. Even I don't know. As for why Ra didn't take the authority of man, because my mother hid the authority of man." The sun god should still think that the authority of man has returned to the essence of man with the death of Amon, waiting for the day when the god with the true name and the power will be materialized again. These words suddenly reminded Seth of the Book of True Names. The Book of True Names was also hidden at the beginning, so it survived. So was the Book of True Names also hidden by Sobek's mother? After thinking about it, Seth still asked this question. The Book of True Names was also hidden by your mother. He wanted to get the true name of God recorded in the Book of True Names. If he could get the details about the Book of True Names from Sobek, he might be able to find the missing Book of True Names. Hearing Seth asking about the Book of True Names, Sobek shook his head. My mother didn't hide it. Then do you know who hid it? Seth asked. As soon as he finished speaking, Seth watched Sobek's body fade from its golden color. The scales on its body turned pale, as if it would die in the next moment. Seth didn't know what to do with the sudden change, and could only look at Sobek. Sobek coughed and said, "It's time for me to come out. Brother, purify the power of man as soon as possible. Then kill Apep and bring his body to Fayum." After that, Sobek's body disintegrated into a pile of mud. Seth frowned and covered the surrounding waters with divine power. There was no trace of Sobek. Is it a clone like him? After thinking for a while, Seth couldn't think of anything. He knew nothing about the mysterious Sobek and Sobek's mother. However, Seth planned to test Hathor first about the power of man. As for the search for the reed marsh in the underworld, Seth was still hesitant. First, he had never been to the underworld, and second, Sobek might be lying. If it hadn't disappeared suddenly, Seth planned to make him make a flawless oath. This is to prove what he said. Now there is no way to prove it, so I can only put it aside. After Seth made up his mind, he left Fayum. It didn't take much time to leave Fayum unimpeded. However, there was one small thing that Seth was more concerned about. That was the change in the river water. The moment he left Fayum, he actually felt uncomfortable, as if he had left a familiar person. Was it the power of Sobek's mother? Thinking of this, Seth planned to take Hank back to Heliopolis after his clone went back. With the power of Ra, things that shouldn't exist should be purified. In front of the yellow sand temple in the desert, Shu, wearing a golden feather crown, confirmed that there was no one in the temple, raised his hand and wrote a few lines of holy text. After the last word was written, The holy texts turned into a breeze and left. Shu sat in front of the temple, waiting for Seth's reply. At this time, a bird woven from wheat straw flew in front of Shu. The breath of Osiris? Shu touched the flying bird curiously. The flying bird woven with straw disintegrated into a series of holy book texts. After reading it carefully, Shu was somewhat amazed. I didn't expect that Osiris would cultivate new seeds in order not to damage Set's authority. He also asked me to convene a divine council so that other gods could follow suit. What a deep brotherly love. Although he was amazed, Shu still wrote back to Osiris, not every upper god or lower god has the ability to increase the number of humans on a large scale while maintaining Set's authority intact. In addition, Shu also asked Osiris to persuade Set to obey the oracle of Ra. The junction of the desert and the tributaries of the Nile River. Set, who was hiding in the desert, appeared and waited for the return of his clone. He did not go to meet up with his clone. The real body did not approach the Nile River. This was a decision made by Set out of caution. Although the clone had his consciousness, the two did not share it. Therefore, Set was still unclear about what was happening at the bottom of the Nile River. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew over. It was Shu's letter. Set frowned and nodded at Shu's letter. It said that he was waiting for him in front of Set's temple in the desert. It asked Set to go back and discuss the matter of Ra's oracle. After reading it, Set dispersed the letter. He knew that a god must have asked Shu to hold a meeting of gods and asked him to give up the desert territory. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Crying. The desert occupies 80% of the entire land. Hathor proposed that he give up 70% of the territory, and the gods probably meant the same thing. They might even ask him to give up more, just to ensure that the desert would not disappear. After all, everyone hopes that their own authority can be increased. This is instinct. Seth thought, raised his hand and wrote one letter after another, and the yellow sand birds flew into the desert. Although the desert is desolate, it is still alive. The authority of some lower gods depends entirely on the desert. For example, the dragon blood tree, agave, thousand years orchid, sea buckthorn, sand fox. These powers themselves have been embodied. The desert territory shrinks, and their authority will also be affected. If they die accidentally, they will die completely. Let them talk to Shu first. In the end, Shu must have persuaded them to give in. After all, there are few gods who are based on the desert. Besides, with the oracle of Ra, they can't change anything. However, Seth doesn't expect them to do anything. It just takes some time, and he has to go to the underworld, merge the authority of people as soon as possible, and verify an idea at the same time. The temple built with flowers, vines, and giant trees also emits a soft light in the dark night. Nephthys, wearing a black skirt and a straw basket crown, arrived with a gentle face. She stepped into the temple with a gentle smile on her face. Osiris, who was taking a nap on the throne, woke up and saw Nephthys and said in surprise, "Little sister, why are you here?" Nephthys was still smiling, but her expression was a little lonely, and she said, "I came to find Sister Isis. Isis is on duty and will not be back until dawn." Osiris said, concerned, "What happened?" After a moment of silence, Nephthys smiled and said, "Nothing." Looking at Nephthys, who looked even more lonely, Osiris sighed and said, "If you have anything to say, please speak up. Don't keep it in your heart." Nephthys walked to the window and sat down, looking at the crescent moon in the sky, and said, "Seth rejected me again. He loves Best. They even have the idea of getting married. Brother Osiris, is Best more beautiful than me? Brother Seth and I have been together since we were born. Compared to Best, I know Brother Seth better." Why did Brother Seth choose Best? A series of words revealed Nephthys' unwillingness. Osiris sighed again. "You should have expressed your feelings earlier, but Set's feelings have changed. You shouldn't be obsessed with him anymore." Nephthys' beautiful eyes were filled with tears. "I know and understand, but Brother Osiris, I still love Brother Seth. Love cannot be forced. Osiris persuaded. Nephthys closed her eyes and shed tears, her face full of pain. Osiris was helpless and could only comfort her with words. Suddenly, Nephthys opened her eyes, took out a pottery jar, and cried, "Brother Osiris, this is the wine I brewed when I became a god. I originally planned to take it out when I married Brother Seth. Now it's impossible. Drink it up with me." Seeing Nephthys like this, Osiris could not refuse and could only agree. Nephthys opened the seal of the pottery jar, and the rich grape aroma instantly filled the entire temple. Osiris took out the wine utensils and took the wine silently. "Try it, Brother Osiris. This is the first wine I brewed after becoming a god." Nephthys showed a bitter smile and said with tears, "Okay." Osiris put the wine in the cup into his mouth. The mellow taste of fruit wine filled his mouth and nose, and then slid down his throat. "It tastes good," Osiris commented. "Yeah." Nephthys smiled, and the bitterness on her face was a little less. It seemed that Osiris's praise brought comfort to Nephthys. Noticing the changes in Nephthys, Osiris continued to praise Nephthys. At the same time, he suppressed the idea of taking out the moonlight wine. Originally, Nephthys had a portion of moonlight wine. However, Isis was afraid that giving Nephthys the moonlight wine, which was given by Seth, would increase Nephthys' admiration for Seth. Therefore, this moonlight wine has been in Osiris's hands. He plans to find a suitable opportunity to take it out. He just heard Nephthys say that Seth already loves best, so he plans to take it out. Nephthys didn't know what he was thinking, so he talked about interesting things in his childhood. When he said childhood, he actually meant when they were imprisoned on the top of a mountain as demigods. "Brother Osiris, do you remember that I used to be afraid of heights?" "I remember." Osiris nodded. "You were always afraid of falling from the top of the mountain." "I always refused to get close to the edge of the mountain. Later, I gradually got better and was no longer afraid of heights." "It's because Brother Seth and Brother Osiris always told me not to be afraid." Nephthys smiled. "Especially Brother Osiris, you have always been so brave and not afraid of anything. Facing such a father god and mother goddess, you dare to stand bravely in front of us." Osiris smiled and said, "Actually, I was afraid too. It was Seth's bravery that made me no longer afraid. He deserves to be the god of war and strength." A strange color flashed in Nephthys' eyes, and she said, "Brother Osiris's authority is just like you. Fertility, agriculture, and plants are all full of life and can help those in need. No need to comfort me." Osiris took a glass of wine and said, "Every authority has its own advantages." "Yeah." Nephthys nodded. "If you stand by the river and look at the wide river, you can't see the other side of the river. This is the Nile River, a river called a river, but more like a sea. Especially in the dark night, the river water is even darker." Seth stood in the air. His eyes fell on the front of the river. There is the lower tail of the Nile River. Thick white fog shrouded this section of the Nile River. The red fish, crocodiles, hippos, water snakes and other creatures living in the river all dared not approach. They would avoid this area of water because it is the first stop on the way to the destination of the dead, the Styx. Although it is part of the Nile River, this part is called the Styx. Seth raised his hand, and a boat made of yellow sand with two pointed ends and upturned, and a canopy in the middle landed on the Nile River. Then Seth landed steadily on the boat and pushed the boat forward with divine power. He has taken back his clone and obtained the authority of the cursed person. Now he has to take advantage of the fact that Ra is not patrolling the underworld, but fighting with Apep, to enter the underworld to find the reed marsh. I hope to find a reed marsh in the shortest time possible. Chapter 36. Styx. Entering the thick fog, Seth first felt the cold and heard very noisy voices of people and animals. After the boat sailed for a while, the thick fog suddenly retreated to both sides. It did not disappear, but retreated to both sides of the Styx. The entire Styx and the situation on the riverside were revealed. The two sides of the dark river were full of withered green plants, without a trace of life. In the Styx, there were countless dead souls. They were immersed in the dark river water, wearing the clothes they wore when they were alive, and kept calling for help. The dead animals kept wailing and even attacked the dead souls around them. Some weak dead souls were torn to pieces, and their limbs fell to the bottom of the river, but they were still pushed forward by the river water. Some of the dead souls also emitted a glimmer of light. The coldness of the sticks and the attacks of other dead souls could not hurt them. That was the blessing given to them by God. Generally speaking, these dead souls died as living sacrifices. Seth had previously provided blessings for a group of slaves who were sacrificed alive, so that they could be successfully sent to the underworld by the sticks. However, whether they will be human or animal in the next life, Seth cannot know. According to his fused memories, everything in the underworld is a mystery. The gods only know that the underworld has not fully grown and can give new life to the dead, and it is full of dead souls and the breath of death. For the gods, the dead air of the underworld makes them uncomfortable. In addition, the underworld is empty, except for the dead souls. There are still dead souls, and no gods will go to the underworld. Only Ra will patrol the underworld day after day. What is the reason? The gods don't know, because Ra never said it. Seth guessed that Ra wanted to get accurate information about the revival of the underworld. After all, according to what Ra said, after the underworld is revived, not only will various underworld gods be born, but they can also rely on the power of the underworld to completely kill Apep, killing a powerful opponent who can be resurrected day after day. Seth has experienced the feeling of powerlessness. So, understand why Ra patrols day after day. Of course, he avoids Ra to enter the underworld because human power cannot be seen in the light. In addition, Seth always feels that he should avoid Ra. The reason may be that when he merged his memories, he also merged the resentment left by Seth. As his thoughts were scattered, Seth suddenly heard someone patting the boat. Looking in the direction of the sound, he saw a fat middle-aged man in gorgeous clothes. "Hey, young man, pull me on the boat." The middle-aged man shouted, "I have 30,000 gold coins. As long as you pull me up, I will give you half of the gold coins." Hearing this, Seth suspected that this dead spirit had gone crazy. "Young man, can you save me on the boat?" At this time, an old man spoke. He was wearing tattered clothes. Before Seth could speak, the nearby dead spirits all spoke. They all asked Seth to pull them on the boat. The sticks was too cold and too scary. Seth looked at these dead spirits who didn't know they were dead. In addition, those dead spirits who tried hard to swim to the river but couldn't swim across. "Have you forgotten that you are dead?" Seth said lightly. "Nonsense. You're the one who died." A woman yelled, "If you don't want to pull us on the boat, you just say we're dead." What a beast. As soon as these words came out, the undead spirits blessed by God and the undead spirits who knew they were dead were terrified. In their eyes, only God could do this. And the woman was actually cursing a being that looked like God. Seth looked at the woman who was cursing him. Before he could make any move or say anything, a leopard next to the woman bit the woman's body. The body of the undead was not meant for fighting. In addition, the woman still believed that she was not dead, so she could only scream when attacked by the leopard. Later, she wanted to fight back. However, her soul was broken and posed no threat to the leopard. The leopard tore the woman's undead spirit viciously, and the other undead spirits wanted to stay away from the leopard. However, the sticks was full of undead spirits, so they were still next to the leopard. Seth looked at the leopard, which looked at him eagerly with pleading eyes. He was first surprised at the cleverness of the leopard, and then felt pity. If the leopard was alive, he would keep it. He loved the smart big cat. Seth could not revive the big cat, which was only a soul. He was not the god of life. Seth thought about it and gave the leopard a divine blessing. It was enough for it to enter the underworld smoothly and wait for a new life. The blessed leopard wagged its tail at Seth, and it no longer felt cold. The undead who had not realized that they were dead before also understood when they saw this scene. There was a god on the sand boat. They were indeed dead. Seth looked at these undead who reacted, thinking that they would calm down and accept the fact of their own death. However, an old woman fluttered in the river and shouted, "Lord God, please let me revive. I buried a pottery jar at home with gold and silver coins in it. I haven't spent them yet. I don't want to die." One took the lead, and the other undead shouted again. The child said that he wanted to live because he had not yet learned all the words and had not yet eaten the fig cake he had been looking forward to. The young man said that he wanted to live because he had not yet realized his dream of becoming a tribal warrior. The newlywed woman said that she wanted to live because she had finally married the person she loved. The middle-aged man said that he wanted to live because he was worried about his young children, elderly parents, and weak wife. The old man said that he wanted to live because he was unwilling to die despite his aging body. As the dead souls spoke one by one, Seth sighed. Death is irreversible. He steered the sand ship forward quickly, leaving the dead souls behind. At the same time, Seth punished some dead souls who pretended to be his priests by wiping out their souls. In the midst of a sincere confession, lying really made him uncomfortable. The sand ship passed through the crowded dead souls and came to the end of the Styx. At the end of the Styx, there is a door. The stone door, hundreds of meters high, is built entirely of black boulders. In fact, it is not accurate to say that it is a door, but a door frame to be more precise. The door frame was filled with black fog. The fog contained the breath of death, and behind the door was the underworld. Seth estimated the time, and there were still 9 solar hours before dawn. Wrapping himself with divine power, Seth quickly walked from the sand boat into the underworld. The moment Seth left the sand boat collapsed into yellow sand. Then it sank to the bottom of the Styx and turned into the silt of the Styx. The breath of the dead and the Styx quickly covered up the remaining divine breath of Seth. The Styx returned to calm again, as if no one had been there. Chapter 37 Transformation and Concern. In the dim sky, a faint red sun was hanging high. A little breath of life could be seen on the scorched earth. The dark Styx carried the undead souls that had transformed into the dead and flowed away. The breath of death was everywhere. Seth stood above the Styx, and this was what he saw and felt. He instinctively felt uncomfortable and rejected the underworld. If he followed his instinct, he would immediately return to the human world. Suppressing his thoughts, Seth flew away along the Styx. At the same time, Seth kept reciting his real names. 1, 2, 3, 4. One by one, the giant yellow sand birds were born. When he counted to 1,000, Seth stopped. Looking at the densely packed giant yellow sand birds, Seth said, "Go find the reed marsh." "Yes, Master." The giant yellow sand birds responded in unison. Then they scattered, searching the underworld with Seth as the center. Seth stood in midair, waiting for news from the giant yellow sand birds. Although the underworld has not yet fully grown, it has not yet fully recovered, but Seth looked at the scorched earth with no end in sight, and felt that in just 8 suns, it was highly likely that he would not be able to find the reed marsh that Sobek had mentioned. If he could not find it, he could only exit the underworld. Otherwise, he would definitely see him when he was patrolling in the underworld chariot. Thinking, Seth landed on the edge of the Styx. The breath of death covered him, and was isolated by Seth's divine power. With a long breath, Seth suppressed his power and the authority of war, and only allowed the authority of the desert to transform divine power. After a moment, the breath of the desert replaced Seth's original breath. Seth injected the power of the desert into Ankh, and then placed Ankh on the scorched earth of the underworld. The moment Ankh touched the scorched earth of the underworld, the scorched land turned into grains of yellow sand, and it was expanding rapidly, as if the yellow sand was alive, madly transforming the scorched earth of the underworld. Seeing this, Seth showed joy on his face. "It's done. The scorched earth of the underworld can be transformed into a desert." Originally, Seth had no intention of going to the underworld because he knew very little about it. Moreover, the underworld had not yet fully recovered and grown. He subconsciously ignored the underworld, until Sobek proposed that there were reed marshes in the underworld. If there were reeds growing, it would not be difficult for the underworld to carry deserts. With the idea in mind, Seth decided to give it a try. Now it has been proven that it is indeed feasible. However, there is still a biggest obstacle. Seth took back Ankh and no longer suppressed his own war, power and authority. The rapid desertification of the underworld scorched earth stopped. At this time, hundreds of miles of scorched earth had become deserts. Even though the light in the underworld was dim, the golden desert seemed to be shining against the dark scorched earth. This was the problem Seth was worried about. There was also the sun in the underworld. Ra drove the underworld chariot and patrolled around, and he could see everything on the earth. Large-scale desertification and Set's divine power could not be concealed at all. Would Ra agree to his desertification of the underworld? There was a high probability that he would not, because the underworld had not fully recovered or grown. Therefore, from the creation of the world to now, no god has been born in the underworld. As long as the underworld grows up, the god of the underworld will be born quickly. If Set turns the scorched earth of the underworld into sand in advance, the original god of the scorched earth will be gone before he is born. This is equivalent to God killing God, although God has not yet been born. So Set thinks that there is a small probability that Ra will agree. But, how to make the small probability become 100%? Thinking about it, Set also wants to draw some water from the sticks. Restore the scorched earth that has been transformed into a desert. However, Set was stunned for a moment. The desert that has been sanded has shrunk a little and turned back into the scorched earth of the underworld. After a careful inspection, Set confirmed this, and found the reason for the shrinkage of the desert. That is the ubiquitous breath of death in the underworld. The desert he transformed was no longer supported by his divine power, and was stained by the breath of death, and it was gradually restored to the scorched earth of the underworld. Set estimated that after 5 more suns, the scorched earth of the underworld after the sanctification will be restored. This problem is easy to solve. Set can use divine power to flush it in time. Compared with the power obtained after the transformation of the scorched earth, this time seems insignificant. Since the underworld would recover on its own, Set did not lead the water of the sticks. Instead, he stood by the sticks, waiting for the giant yellow sand birds to come back. The dark water of the sticks was full of dead souls. Under the transformation of the breath of the underworld, they soon became dead souls. The difference between dead souls and undead souls is that undead souls can be reincarnated and contain the breath of the underworld. However, the two are basically the same noise and the refusal to accept their own death. They scrambled to climb up the river bank. However, they could not climb out at all. Even animals that are so good at swimming could not climb out. Similarly, the undead souls also saw Set on the shore. They prayed loudly for Set to pull them up. Some undead souls promised to give various benefits, some told their own misery, and some used their own appearance. However, Set ignored them. The undead souls cursed loudly, and then continued to try to get to shore frantically. Set gave divine punishment to several undead souls who cursed the most. Then he cast his eyes on an undead soul on the distant river bank. The young teenager was dressed in ordinary clothes, and his face was full of excitement. This was a lucky guy. Seth had just seen him being pushed ashore by the water of the sticks. The sticks was flowing, and the water would naturally surge. Not only the boy, but Seth also saw a desert fox washed ashore in the distance. Its first reaction was to quickly get away from the sticks and run away. The boy who got ashore tried to save people. He stretched out his hand to pull a girl up. However, there were countless hands next to the girl's outstretched hand. The boy quickly retracted his hand. The girl cried and said, "Save me." The pitiful request for help made the boy very sad, but he did not reach out again, because there were countless hands next to the girl's outstretched hand, and countless hands were holding the girl. They were afraid that they would miss this opportunity to get ashore. Among the people holding the girl, Seth also saw 3 people with the breath of divine power. The divine power of God only protects their souls so that they can reincarnate smoothly, but the divine power will not let them escape from the sticks. The boy didn't reach out to save people in the end. If he had, he would have been pulled back. The girl and the group of people could only be pushed forward by the water of the sticks. Seeing this, Seth felt a little sympathy for the boy. He was willing to save people, which was a good thing. He didn't overestimate himself and knew how to give up, which was considered smart. However, is it really lucky to be washed ashore by the sticks? Seth cast his eyes on the scorched earth far away from the sticks. There were scattered undead wandering on the scorched earth. They had a strong breath of death and dull expressions, as if they had lost all their wisdom. If nothing unexpected happened, those undead were also the lucky ones who were washed ashore. Chapter 38 Return without success. Finally, the boy left the sticks and explored far away. He also saw Seth, but he didn't come over. Seth took out wine and barbecue to kill time. However, the wine and barbecue were soon corroded by the breath of death. The smell of corruption appeared in the wine and barbecue. Seth was very disgusted and had to destroy the wine and barbecue. After that, Seth waited by the sticks. Soon, 5 solar hours had passed. However, not a single yellow sand giant bird came back. Seth couldn't help but frown, but he could only wait. After another 2 solar hours, the yellow sand giant birds flew back one after another. However, they were all very ashamed. Yellow sand giant bird number 1 said, "Master, I found nothing except the dark earth and the dead." The information fed back by the other yellow sand giant birds was exactly the same as what the yellow sand giant bird number 1 said. "Then have you seen the boundary of the underworld?" Seth asked. Reply to the master, "No." The yellow sand giant birds shook their heads and replied. Seth sighed. It seems that more time is needed. Thinking of this, Seth took back 1,000 giant yellow sand birds. Then he passed through the gate of the underworld and quickly left the underworld. After returning to the sticks on the human side, Seth also left quickly. He didn't want to collide with Ra driving the chariot of the underworld. In the magnificent temple built with blooming flowers, verdant vines, and giant trees, the flower table engraved with divine patterns was cluttered with wine utensils. However, Nephthys and Osiris, who were originally drinking, disappeared. In a room inside the temple, Nephthys stood at the head of the bed, and she looked at Osiris who was lying on the bed with his eyes closed. The green skin symbolizing plants and agriculture, the straight eyebrows, the straight nose bridge, and the perfectly shaped lips, everything has not changed, and it is still the appearance that Nephthys admires. Nephthys reached out and touched Osiris's forehead, then the brow bone, eyes, nose, and mouth. The real touch, and Osiris did not resist. All of these made Nephthys feel satisfied. Although Osiris did not resist because he was drunk by her wine, Nephthys was still very satisfied. As a goddess, she could be sure, even if it was because of the wine, a new life had been born in her belly, a new life that belonged to her and brother Osiris. Excited, and mixed with satisfaction. Nephthys wanted to tell the gods about this very much, especially to Isis and Osiris. But, no, not yet. Her plan still needs time. Some time, brother Osiris, I'm leaving. Nephthys looked at Osiris reluctantly. The time for the sun to rise is coming. That is the time that has never changed since she was born. She should go. After drawing Osiris's facial features with her hands again, Nephthys smiled. Brother Osiris, wait. The process may be a little painful, but our family of 3 will eventually be together. After saying that, Nephthys left the room reluctantly. He replaced the empty pottery jars and the used wine vessels. Then, he left the temple before dawn. In the temple room, Osiris woke up and sat by the window. A ray of light flashed in the sky, and the sun was about to rise. Although things have deviated from the original track, Osiris smiled. But now the track is back on the right track. The edge of the desert. Seth returned here and pretended that he had never left. Before he could make any move, a agave floated to his side. A letter from Mulin, the god of agave. Seeing the reply, Seth frowned and touched the agave. In an instant, the agave collapsed into a series of holy book texts. After reading it carefully, Seth frowned even more. Although he did not expect these gods to do anything, he also hoped that they could argue with reason and entangle Shu for a while. It would be best if he could argue with Shu for 10 days or half a month. In order to give them confidence, Seth also specifically stated that if anyone made things difficult for them in the future, he would stand up for them. Unexpectedly, they went to find Shu. Shu told them that he would ensure that their foundation was safe and sound. Then, the group of gods went back happily. Even the god of agave, Mulin, took the initiative to ask Shu. He would tell Seth who wrote to them the news. Kill her. This was Seth's first thought. Then Seth suppressed it. Gods cannot kill gods. However, he wrote down this account. Damn Mulin, the god of agave. After cursing in his heart for a while, Seth knew that he could not delay it any longer. He must go to see Shu and talk about it. At the same time, Seth also wanted to test Shu. If Shu could help ask Ra to agree to his desertification of the underworld, then giving up 70% of the desert would be fine. After all, Shu was one of the first two gods created by Ra and the god of order. Usually he was responsible for resolving disputes among the gods. He should have extra points with Ra. Of course, no matter who disagreed, he had to do it. If it didn't work openly, he would do it secretly. He just had to find a way not to be discovered by Ra. After making a decision, Seth returned to the temple. In the giant wood temple, Isis came back exhausted and smelling the fishy smell of Apep. She saw the empty pottery jar, wine cup, and wine spoon on the table, which still smelled of wine. At this time, Osiris came out of the temple with sleepy eyes. 2 wine cups. Did anyone come tonight? Isis asked curiously. Yeah, Osiris nodded. Nephthys came last night. She was rejected by Seth again, and then she asked you to comfort her. But you are on duty. Nephthys kept crying and asked me to drink with her. I was not allowed to use my divine power to resolve it. Then we got drunk. I just woke up thinking about you coming back. She should be sleeping in the other room. After hearing this, Isis couldn't help rubbing her eyebrows and said, my little sister is too persistent. My little brother no longer admires her. It's useless for her to win her back now. Osiris walked over, took Isis's hand, and said, love itself is persistent. Nephthys will slowly come to terms with it. If she really can't let it go, let's take her to see Hathor. The power of love will definitely find someone suitable for Nephthys. Isis nodded and said helplessly, this is the only way. However, after taking Nephthys there, take my younger brother with you and ask Hathor to help him look for it. Yes. Osiris nodded. Isis let go of Osiris' hand and said, I'll go clean it up. Apep's breath is really bad and hard to get rid of. Chapter 39, Second Divine Meeting. In front of the yellow sand temple, Shu waited quietly. At the same time, he was also feeling emotional. The sun was shining brightly and the earth should be full of life. But the endless desert was too desolate. There were almost no living animals. At this time, a giant yellow sand bird came into Shu's sight. It was Seth who came back. Shu looked at Seth walking down from the back of the yellow sand bird. His face was not looking good, and he smiled. Little Seth, long time no see. Seth's mouth twitched when he heard this joke, and he said, I just met you at the Gods' Council not long ago. Hearing this, Shu smiled and said, the gods of Malayan have figured it out. Little Seth, have you figured it out? Seth sighed and said, with the power of the gods, it shouldn't be difficult to let humans live in the desert as if they were on the plains. Not difficult, Shu explained patiently, but the souls of the transformed humans are not needed by the underworld. Seth understood this, and he pretended to be disappointed and said, how much desert territory do I need to give up? 70% of the existing one. Shu gave an accurate number. With Hathor words, Seth was already prepared, and he looked at Shu. If I lose 70% of the desert territory, I will be seriously injured. Shu also knew this and comforted Seth. Wait until the underworld is fully revived, then we can take back the territory. How long will it take for the underworld to revive? An epoch. Seth shook his head and said, besides, it's very difficult to take back the abandoned territory. Shu couldn't really say, because he didn't know how long it would take for the underworld to fully revive. He asked Ra, and Ra just said it would be soon. Seth took this opportunity to ask, can Ra give me another authority? Another authority? Shu was shocked, then shook his head. Impossible. Thoth once asked Ra to give him new authority, but Ra refused. What authority did Thoth ask for? Seth was a little curious. I don't know, but the authority related to the underworld. Shu shook his head and said, Thoth wanted to study and record the underworld at that time. Hearing this, Seth sighed in his heart. Ra was unwilling to give Thoth the authority related to the underworld, so it can be said that he had no hope of turning the underworld into scorched earth. Thinking of this, Seth didn't plan to continue. I can voluntarily give up 70% of the desert territory, but I want to convene a divine council and let the gods swear to promise not to stop me from taking back the desert territory after the underworld is revived. Okay. Shu promised decisively. After the negotiation, Seth and Shu hadn't said anything yet. In the distance, a golden falcon flew in front of them in the blink of an eye. The golden falcon landed and turned into a little boy in a white skirt. The little boy raised his hands, palms raised, and said respectfully, Master Shu, Master Seth. Seth and Shu were both surprised. How could the messenger of Ra come? Instinctively, Set felt something was wrong. What oracle does Ra have? She looked at the messenger and asked. After 3 solar days, Ra will convene a divine council in the pantheon. The messenger replied respectfully. What is the reason for convening the divine council? Set asked. The messenger shook his head and said, I don't know. Go, Set said helplessly. Yes, the messenger replied respectfully and turned into a golden falcon and left. She looked at Set, sighed, and said, I'm afraid we have to talk about giving up the desert territory at the God's Council. At this moment, Set calmed down. Temporarily giving up the desert territory was already an established fact, so it didn't make any difference whether it was said at the God's Council or in private. Besides, he originally planned to let Shu convene the God's Council to get the promise of the gods. I still think the same as before, Set replied. I will help you, little Set. Shu smiled. Thank you. Set thanked him sincerely. Then Shu left. Set was thinking about how to be honest with Best. He needed to find the Book of True Names, find the one who could hide the Book of True Names from Ra's eyes, then ask him to help hide the scorched earth of the underworld that he had turned into sand. Not only that, if possible, he would turn all the land except the sticks into sand. Keb, the god of the earth, ascended to the rank of the Lord God with only the authority of the earth. After he turned all the scorched earth of the underworld into sand, his strength would definitely be thousands of times stronger than it is now. However, it was just a thought for now. Set was not sure whether that existence could hide the abnormality of the entire underworld. In short, he needed to reconnect with Best. When Set was worrying about how to make up for his lie to Best, a perfect white and blue falcon flew in front of him. Set saw the white and blue falcon and frowned. It was Hathor's falcon. Speaking of which, he had forgotten Hathor. The god of love plotted against him and wanted to resurrect his lover. The deal between them naturally collapsed, and the promises made would not be fulfilled. However, Hathor should not know that he had known her calculations, because when Hathor mentioned Fayum, she did not mention Sobek and Sobek's mysterious mother. She seemed to be unaware of their existence. If she knew, she would have told him not to believe Sobek's words. In short, Hathor should be happy to think that his former lover had been resurrected. With a sneer, Set touched Hathor's messenger. The two-color falcon disintegrated into a series of holy book texts. After a careful reading, the letter was full of Hathor's thoughts and her strong and passionate love. Skipping these, Set saw the last instructions. Hathor said that she had reached a deal with an unspeakable existence. That person helped hide the authority of man and the body of Amon. With the power of that person, even if Amon replaced Set and merged the authority of man, Ra would not find out. Therefore, Hathor asked Amon to pretend to be Set's style of speaking and doing things. Avoid being noticed by Ra that Amon was resurrected and repeating the tragedy at the beginning of creation. Set dispersed the text of the holy book and thought about the unspeakable existence mentioned by Hathor. Is that Sobek's mother? Fayum is Sobek's territory, and there is also Sobek's mother. Amon's body and the authority of man are there. It means that it was Sobek's mysterious mother who made a deal with Hathor. Being able to hide the authority and not be discovered by Ra, it seems that he doesn't have to find Best. To be honest, Sobek has more goodwill towards him. If I ask Sobek for help, would they agree? However, if Sobek and the others agree, I will become a lower god who depends on Sobek's mother. I feel that I will lose some of my autonomy. That is not what Seth wants. He wants to live happily every day as he pleases. However, things always go against one's wishes, especially when he is facing a group of gods who are more cunning than lotus roots. Chapter 40 Sekhmet's letter. With a sigh, Seth collected his feelings and suppressed his extra thoughts. Should he ask Sobek's mother for help? This matter can be postponed temporarily before the meeting of the gods. He must find the reed marsh, cleanse the curse of human authority, and then merge the authority. Otherwise, after the meeting of the gods, he will be weakened or even seriously injured because of the loss of desert authority. After briefly replying a few words of concern to Hathor, Set went to the edge of the desert to wait for the night to fall. During this period, Isis, Osiris, and Nephthys all sent letters to comfort Set. They heard the wind that the god Ra convened the meeting of the gods with the purpose of making Set abandon the desert territory. Not only that, Isis said that a god secretly crossed Shu. She told Ra that it was Set who prevented the gods from blessing mankind and increasing the number of humans. Therefore, this meeting of the gods was brought about. Isis is investigating who it is. After finding out, she will tell Set. Set scattered a few letters, and he was not too angry. Instead, he was thinking about who did this. After thinking about it, Seth had more than 500 suspected gods in his mind. Seth was originally cold and domineering, and there were many gods who admired Nephthys. He had conflicts with many gods. Those gods were not the opponents of Seth, who was the main god, and were only beaten unilaterally. In short, there were more than 500 people who had grudges against him. If we investigate carefully, this number may increase to 1,000. Forget it. Don't think about it. Let my sister investigate this matter. Seth sighed and said helplessly. After that, Seth sent a letter to Osiris. In it, he expressed his gratitude to Isis and Osiris. Then he asked Osiris to help find out who was plotting against him. The reason why Seth sent a letter to Osiris was that he was still worried that Osiris would be hooked by Nephthys when Isis was busy. Isis was very good to him, and he didn't want Isis to be sad. After that, Seth carefully responded to Nephthys' concern. The words were carefully chosen to express gratitude between brothers and sisters. By the way, at the end of the letter, he mentioned that Sano, the god of lapis lazuli, was good. Lapis lazuli is used in the Wezek ornaments that the gods like. Lapis lazuli is also used in murals, papyrus paintings, and other dyeing. Therefore, the lapis lazuli god is also very popular among the gods. Then this series of holy book words turned into yellow sandbirds and left. After that, Set continued to wait for the arrival of night. However, when it was approaching night, Set saw a lioness with flames all over her body running from the void in the distance. The lioness was strong and her brown pupils were full of fighting spirit. Set looked at the arrival of the lioness in surprise. The lioness came to Set and stopped, looking well behaved. This litter looks really unique. Set was helpless. The letters of the gods are all small and exquisite. The one-to-one reproduction of the lioness's body shape really fits Sekhmet's character. Reaching out and touching the lioness, in an instant, the lioness read a series of holy book words. After reading it roughly, Set felt a little headache. Sekhmet also heard the reason behind the meeting of the gods. She first expressed regret for the loss of power. Then she proposed that she wanted to fight with Seth while Seth's power was intact. If Seth agreed, Sekhmet would come to the desert to find him. Set was not interested in fighting. However, Sekhmet was really a strange god. He was not the god of war, but he was keen on fighting. After clearly rejecting Sekhmet in a letter, the night that Set had been waiting for came again. However, Set was not in a hurry. Instead, he waited for one sun in the same place before setting off for the underworld. Entering the underworld through the Styx, even though Set had been waiting in the desert near the Styx, it still took 3 suns to enter the underworld. Set used his divine power to isolate the breath of death in the underworld, and then flew to the depths of the underworld. After reaching the farthest point of the search by the yellow sand giant bird number 1 last night, Set released 1,000 yellow sand giant birds. Search for the reed marsh. Yes, Master. The giant yellow sand birds shouted in unison. Then they separated to search again. Set hoped that there would be good news today. At the same time, Set landed on the scorched earth of the underworld and caught a few wandering human undead. Who are you? Set looked at the undead who looked like a middle-aged man and asked him. The middle-aged man just stayed there and didn't speak. Seeing this, Set tried to give him a trace of divine power. However, the moment the divine power entered the middle-aged man's body, he was burning with cold black flames all over his body. In the blink of an eye, he became a pile of ashes. The sudden change made Set helpless. He tried to ask other undead, but they were the same as the middle-aged man just now. They were detained in place, staring at Set blankly. They had lost their wisdom, consciousness, and emotions, and were wandering on the scorched earth of the underworld. There was no way to communicate at all, and there was no way to find out from them whether they had seen the reed marsh. At this moment, Set wanted the authority of wisdom a little. If he had the authority of wisdom, he could give them wisdom again. Unfortunately, he didn't. With a sigh, Set let the dead go and let them continue to wander. As for sending them back to the Styx, Seth was worried that they would still look like this after reincarnation. Then the existence that gave birth to such creatures must have had a hard time. Reincarnating as an animal is fine, and the fittest will soon be eliminated. If reincarnated into a group of intelligent creatures that can communicate, those who gave birth to them and those who were born are all tortured. On the flat grassland, a group of lions who had just eaten were taking a nap. There was still blood on their mouths. Not far away, the remains of the prey were crowded with vultures. Some little lions rushed over from time to time to drive away the vultures, trying to defend the prey. Unfortunately, for the little lions whose wings were not as big as their own and had milk teeth, the vultures didn't care at all. The defense was fruitless, and the little lion decisively went back to complain to the lioness. The lionesses also chose to support the little lions and got up to drive away the vultures. The vultures flew up quickly to avoid the attack. Some vulture feathers fell from them. The little lion rushed over and held it in his mouth, looking excited. Sekhmet leaned against a fig tree and watched the lions playing with a smile. A black cat with gold rings on both ears was speechless. "What's so good about a few lions?" Looking at best, Sekhmet said, "Don't you think the little lions are cute? When facing vultures that are stronger than them and can fly, they will bravely rush over to attack." Best pouted, "I don't think so. I just think it's a shame to sue your mother when you can't beat them." Sekhmet smiled and said nothing. She couldn't argue with Best. This fact has been verified over the long years. At this time, a yellow sandbird flew in front of Sekhmet. Seeing the yellow sandbird, Sekhmet's smile became even wider. Seeing this, Best pouted again. Chapter 41 Waiting. Met, your expression makes me think you admire Seth. Best said. "Admire?" Sekhmet asked in confusion while touching the yellow sandbird. "Why do you have this illusion?" The yellow sandbird disintegrated into a series of holy book texts. "Because you care about Seth very much." Best said, "As a matter of course, I know Seth is very handsome, and he is the god of war and strength. It hits your favorite point perfectly. You are likely to be attracted to him." After reading Seth's reply, Sekhmet said with regret, "I have no feelings for Seth. I just want to fight him. It's a pity that he rejected my request." "You are worried about the divine plan, so you rejected it." Best shook her tail and said. Sekhmet heard this and smiled at Best. "Beth, you think I admire Seth, but I think you admire this young god of war. Since you came to me, you have mentioned Seth almost every moment." Humphrey. Best snorted coldly. "He is a liar." Sekhmet smiled and said nothing. The underworld. Seth's face was ugly. The returning yellow sandbird still did not find the reed marsh. "There are still 2 days before the meeting of the gods. Is Sobek lying?" "No, lying is not good for Sobek." "Damn it." Cursing a few words in his heart, Seth quickly left the underworld. It was almost dawn, and Ra was going to inspect the underworld again. On the top of the mountain, in the sky temple, Nut sang the praises of the god Ra. Keb sat outside the temple, looking at the stars under the sky, with a smile and satisfaction on his face. After Nut sang the praises, she walked out of the temple. She was a little worried. The desert fades, and grasslands cover the earth. The power of Isis and Osiris will be greatly enhanced. They are too powerful, which is not good for you and me. Keb was not worried, but said, "This divine meeting may cause rifts between the 4 of them. Besides, Isis has made a vow. She must fulfill it, unless she is willing to give up eternal life and welcome death." Nut put aside his worries and asked, "Has Goosefeather not gained enough faith?" "Yes." Keb nodded. "I think we should find some more humans to believe in us." Watergrass Oasis. Damses stood on the high altar, his young face full of indifference. Under the altar were 1,000 tied slaves. There were old and young, men and women. Outside the slaves, there were excited people. Damses walked to the stone platform on the side and held up the statue of Seth. Then he spoke loudly to the excited tribesmen. "The great god of the desert has granted us victory. Let us no longer be weak and no longer fear the monsters in the desert. We are no longer an ordinary oasis among thousands of oases. We can only wait to be killed by the powerful oasis. After the Lord God of the desert blesses us, our watergrass oasis will join the ranks of the strong. The children of our oasis don't have to worry about food and war. The elderly in our oasis don't have to worry about being abandoned or despised. All this is because of the Lord God of the desert. As believers of the Lord God of the desert, all we can do is to believe in him wholeheartedly. All oases that do not believe in God and the God of the desert are heretics. Kill the heretics! Kill the heretics! The tribesmen who were watching shouted at the top of their lungs. Everyone's face was full of excitement, and glory. After being blessed by the Lord God of the desert, the tribe's life is getting better and better. This is obvious to everyone. It's all because they are blessed by the God of the desert. Damses held a statue high and said loudly, "We will hold a blood sacrifice to worship the great God of the desert. We will use the blood of the godless heretics to prove our loyalty to the God of the desert." Kill them! Kill them! The tribesmen shouted. Damses looked at the tribal warriors guarding the slaves. These warriors understood, raised their long swords, and killed the slaves one by one. Death is terrible and terrifying. However, all this is for God, for the God of the desert. The people of the tribe are only excited and fanatical. Damses looked at the expressions of the people of the tribe with satisfaction. However, he did not notice. At the edge of the tribesmen surrounding the sacrificial platform, there were two people who did not shout along. They just stared at Damses. The edge of the desert, watching the sun rise again, Seth felt irritated. The rising sun meant that Ra entered the underworld again to patrol. Ra was like the sun. Whenever he drove the 10,000-year ship or the underworld chariot to patrol under the sky, everything on the earth would be seen by him. However, even in the daytime, there are shadows that the sun cannot shine through. Ra cannot see what is happening in the temples of the gods. However, there is no temple in the underworld. With a long sigh, Seth calmed down and waited, and at the same time sent a letter to Thoth. He wanted to get Thoth's records about the underworld. Shu said that Thoth had asked Ra to give him authority over the underworld so that he could study and record the underworld. Even if he was rejected, Seth felt that with Thoth's character, he would also study the underworld. Maybe he has records about the reed marsh. If time was not tight, and he could not find the reed marsh, Seth was not going to let any god know that he was concerned about the underworld, especially when his authority was about to be lost. He cared about the underworld. After sending the letter, Seth waited silently. In the temple built with flowers, vines, and huge trees, Isis sat by the window with a frown on her face, talking to herself. The fusion failed, and there is something missing. We must ask him again. Also, we must find out who Set is as soon as possible, and make him pay the price. At this time, Osiris walked in from outside the temple and said, "Isis, let's go find my little brother." Isis relaxed her brows and asked, "Why did you suddenly find my little brother?" "I'm worried that he will be unhappy and resent us." Osiris sighed. "No." Isis shook her head and said, "My little brother will be unhappy, but that is towards other gods, not towards us. As for resentment, it is even more impossible. No other things, but this time the authority has been compromised." Osiris was still worried. Isis stood up, walked to Osiris, snuggled in his arms, and said, "Don't worry, I have a way to help my little brother get through this trouble." "What way?" Osiris asked curiously. "I'll tell you when I succeed." Isis smiled. "Okay." Osiris smiled helplessly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 reads, At the edge of the desert, Seth watched the last ray of light disappear. As night fell, a full moon hung high in the sky, and the stars twinkled. At this time, a piece of papyrus flew in front of Seth. Seth was surprised that Thoth replied so quickly, and sincerely hoped that Thoth's records would record the reed marsh. After touching the papyrus, a series of sacred texts collapsed. At the same time, a folded papyrus also fell out. After reading the letter carefully, Seth had a complicated expression. Thoth told Seth that the underworld was desolate. In addition to the Styx River running through the existing underworld, there were only countless dead souls wandering in the underworld. Apart from that, there was nothing else in the underworld. At the same time, Thoth told Seth that the underworld itself had not grown up, it could not afford any gods at all, therefore, he asked Ra for arbitrary authority in the underworld, but was rejected by Ra. Seth understood this sentence, which Thoth told him through his own experience. The idea of using the authority of the underworld to make up for his own losses was not feasible. As for the folded paper, it was a map of the underworld. Seth put away the letter and opened the map. In the middle of the irregular land, a river runs through. This is Thoth's map of the underworld. The simple map made Seth speechless and very disappointed. However, a few lines of words on it caught Seth's attention. The dead wandering in the scorched earth of the underworld have wisdom and souls, but they cannot communicate, even if they are given more wisdom. It seems that the underworld has given them the responsibility to wander. The reason behind this can only be explored after the underworld is revived. It is Thoth's handwriting. However, it is of no help in finding the reed marsh in the underworld. Sighing, Seth folded the map and wrote a letter to express his gratitude. At the same time, he stated that he knew about the power of the underworld and would not think about it anymore. Watching the yellow sandbird leave, Seth also rushed to the underworld. Enter the underworld through the sticks. Seth has become accustomed to the dim sky, the dim sun, and the ubiquitous breath of death. Fly to the farthest point that the giant yellow sandbirds searched yesterday. Seth released the giant yellow sandbirds again and let them search in a carpet-like manner. At this moment, there are still 9 solar hours before dawn. Standing on the scorched earth of the underworld, Seth waited. 1 solar hour passed, 2 solar hours passed, 3 solar hours passed. When the 4th solar hour was about to pass, a giant yellow sandbird rushed back. It rushed to Seth and said excitedly, "Master, I found the reed marsh." Seth was surprised at first and then happy, and couldn't help asking, "Did you really find the reed marsh?" "Yes, number 330 dare not lie." Number 330 giant yellow sandbird answered decisively. "Okay, take me there." Seth couldn't help laughing and said. Then the giant yellow sandbird led the way. 2 solar hours later, Seth saw the reed marsh that the giant yellow sandbird said. It's called a reed marsh, but it's actually a reed bush. At a glance, there are a few clumps of white reeds growing in a small golden pool. A young undead was lying in the reed bush. Seth frowned. He was sure that Sobek was talking about the reeds. He looked around. Only the empty scorched earth of the underworld. There were no other reeds except this reed. Using divine power to explore, there was nothing unusual about the reeds, and there was no divine breath. Seth could not help but focus his eyes on the undead and the reeds. Coincidentally, this undead was the boy Seth had seen before, the lucky guy who was washed ashore by the sticks. He actually ran here. Seth was about to call him to wake up, but the young undead opened his eyes and woke up by himself. Seeing Seth and the giant yellow sandbird, the young undead was startled. He stood up and was about to run away. Seth imprisoned him in place and asked casually, "Why are you sleeping in the reeds?" While asking, Seth explored the reeds inch by inch. The young undead was afraid, but still answered the question with a puzzled look on his face. "Besides the reeds, there is only water, so of course we have to sleep on the reeds." Seth raised his eyebrows and said, "Tear off the reeds and sleep on the ground." "There is no ground," the young undead said aggrievedly. "There are only reeds and golden water all around." This sentence made Seth stunned, and he quickly realized the problem. He pointed to the scorched earth at his feet and asked the boy, "Is this land, or golden water?" The boy didn't dare to look directly at Seth, shivering, and replied, "It's golden water." Hearing this, Seth reached out and grabbed a handful of black scorched earth. The cold scorched earth gathered into loose blocks in his hand. Using divine power to explore, it was still scorched earth. After thinking for a moment, Seth used divine power to transform the scorched earth in his hand. The black scorched earth quickly turned into golden sand. "Is it still water now?" Seth stretched out the yellow sand in his hand and asked the boy. The boy nodded slightly and looked at Seth in confusion. Seth threw the yellow sand down and asked the boy, "In your eyes, has this world always been only golden water and reeds?" "No." The boy shook his head. "There are also black land and black rivers." After being washed ashore, I wanted to go back to find my mother, but I couldn't find the way back. I accidentally came across a reed bush and wanted to live by the water. When I pulled the reed bushes to make a house, I felt very sleepy, so I lay on the reeds and fell asleep. The next day, I opened my eyes and found that there were only reeds and golden water around me." After saying this, the boy's eyebrows were full of loss, and he asked, "Is this really the world after death?" "Yeah," Seth answered thoughtfully. Hearing this, the boy was even more lost, but he plucked up the courage and looked at Seth. "You look so powerful, and there are monster birds. Can you take me home? I don't want to leave my mother and brother. I can't go back." Seth shook his head and denied the boy's expectation. "The moment you entered the underworld, you can no longer return to the human world. The dead cannot see, touch, or cross the door to the underworld. This is why the gate to the underworld is right there, but the dead souls washed ashore cannot leave." Hearing this, the boy burst into tears. Seth touched his head and said, "Your experience is very useful to me. I will protect your family." Originally, Seth wanted to say that he would protect the boy himself, but before, he attached his divine power to the dead soul, and the dead soul turned into ashes, so he changed his words. "Thank you," the boy cried. Seth pulled him up, put him aside, and then walked into the golden pool. Coldness was the only feeling Seth had, and nothing happened. After resorting out the boy's experience, Seth reached out and tore off all the reeds. The white reeds were held in his hand, and Seth had not yet reacted. Those white reeds disintegrated into white light spots, emitting white light. The light was so dazzling that Seth felt that he had to close his eyes. Chapter 43, Amon's Remnant Soul. The blinding light lasted for a moment, then began to fade. Seth opened his eyes and was stunned. The endless white reeds swayed gently under the breeze of the underworld. Under the clumps of reeds was clear golden water. This was the land of the underworld as Seth saw. At this moment, it was no longer the empty scorched earth of the underworld where only the dead were wandering. Seth came to his senses, walked step by step into the void, and looked around. What he saw were still clumps of white reeds and golden water. Only in the direction of the sticks was there a trace of scorched earth in the underworld. Back on the ground, Seth felt the flow of the golden water, and a series of questions came to his mind. The reed marshes and the golden water could deceive his eyes, but he did not feel the power contained in the reed marshes and the golden water. They were just like the flowing water and reeds on the earth. In addition, Seth looked at the young dead who looked at him in awe. Why would the hidden reeds and golden water appear next to a dead soul? Is it a coincidence, or is there any other reason? Did Ra discover the reeds in the underworld? Thoth's records of the underworld do not mention the reeds in the underworld. Did Thoth not find the reeds and golden water when he was studying the underworld? Or, did the underworld not have these at that time? Did they appear after Ra announced the revival of the underworld? A series of questions came up, and Seth suppressed them all. Now is not the time to pursue these questions. Seth touched the boy's head and said, "Sit on the back of the flying bird and wait for me in the distance." "Yes," the boy nodded respectfully. Then he obediently followed the drooping wings of the yellow sand giant bird and climbed onto its back. The yellow sand giant bird, instructed by Seth, flapped its wings and flew away. Seth waited for a moment, confirmed that he was the only one around, and took out Amon's heart. The bright red heart seemed to beat again in the next moment. To calm down the joy of getting new authority, Seth bent down and dipped Amon's heart into the golden water. Instantly, Amon's heart burst out with a powerful and pure divine power. The surrounding reeds and golden water instantly disintegrated into the power of emptiness. The next moment, the blank power turned into reeds and golden water again. Seeing this, Seth was extremely surprised. If he saw it right, if he felt it right, then the blank power was the power of faith. Thinking of this, Seth hurriedly isolated himself with divine power. Being contaminated by the power of faith would pollute his own authority. But why does the underworld have such a huge power of faith? When Seth was puzzled, he noticed that a soul floated out of Amon's heart in his hand. Seth frowned, quickly sealed the whole heart with divine power, and put it away. The soul was fuzzy and illusory, and it was unclear. It could only be seen that it was a human soul. Is this the cursed incarnation of Hathor and Amon? When Seth was guessing what the soul was, the illusory soul squatted down, scooped up some golden water with both hands and put it into his mouth. The next moment, the illusory soul became solid. Wearing a crown, a black skirt, and handsome features. Amon. Seth was shocked again. Yes, the appearance of this soul is exactly the same as the human god Amon that Seth saw on the high platform of Fayum. Hello, strange new god. Amon greeted with a smile. Seth looked at Amon vigilantly. Seeing this, Amon smiled and said, I am just a broken soul, relying on the power of faith to stay for a short time. I don't have any divine power, so I can't pose a threat to you. In some time, I will disappear. Seth was skeptical about these words. In response to Seth's vigilance, Amon sighed, restrained his smile, and said, Strange god, do you believe that your own destiny is determined? No matter what you do, you can't change the predetermined destiny? No. Seth was still vigilant, but answered the question. Amon looked directly into Seth's eyes. He wanted to confirm whether Seth was lying. The answer is that he did not see a lie in the golden pupils. Seth did not wait for Amon to continue speaking, and asked, What did you do to anger the supreme god? Sobek and Seth talked about the reason why Amon was killed by Ra. Amon glanced at Seth and said, I don't believe in predetermined fate. In the predetermined fate, I will not become a god, and I will die as a human. I will not love Hathor and enter into marriage. The god who will enter into marriage with Hathor has already been determined. So, I want to change this fate. So I got the authority and became a lower god. But it is not enough to become a god. I still can't change my fate. Therefore, I want to own my fate and dominate my own fate. With the power of faith, I glimpsed the existence of fate. The Supreme Sun God will not allow this to happen. So Fayum and I died in divine punishment. After my death, the human god disappeared, and Hathor waited for the god she was destined to be. Everything returned to the predetermined fate. Seth heard sadness in Amon's words. At the same time, Seth didn't know why, and thought about himself. What is his destiny? The answer is, I don't know. The original Seth has died, and he has become the new Seth. Then the destiny should also change. After all, he is not the original Seth, right? And you strange new god, I can feel that your destiny has been determined. Amon suddenly said, It is the same destiny as mine, death. Seth heard this, frowned. I don't believe it. Amon smiled bitterly. I also hope that what I said is wrong. So, I really hope you can change your predetermined destiny. This is also a gift I left for you who share the same suffering. When you merge the power of man, the gift will appear. Also, strange new god, find a way to completely seize the power of the underworld. Finally, I ask you, after you break free from the predetermined destiny, help Hathor, help her break free from the shackles of Ra, and let her be free. After saying that, Amon disappeared. Seth couldn't ask a series of questions he wanted to ask. At the same time, Seth recalled the original fate of Seth. After being deserted by his friends and relatives, he was killed by Horus. Seth let out a sigh of relief and suppressed his chaotic thoughts. Now is not the time to think too much. First, merge the authority and strengthen yourself. A strong enough force can settle everything. Take out the sealed heart of Amon. After being washed by golden running water, the bright red heart becomes transparent, like white crystal. Feeling the huge power contained in the heart, Seth can't help but be excited. Remove the human form. Seth turned into the true form of the beast-headed god with the body of an okapi. Open your mouth and swallow the whole heart representing human authority. Chapter 44 White Spider. The heart was swallowed into the stomach and turned into pure power. Seth could feel that his real name had changed, and his authority had also changed. This change was reflected in the end, and Seth had only one feeling, powerful, the power of the fourfold authority. After a while, the change ended. Seth closed his eyes and sensed the authority of man. In an instant, he knew everything about human authority. Opening his eyes, Seth looked at the reed marsh that was condensed completely by the blank power of faith. Before, he could not sense any power in the reed marsh, but now he felt it. Faith, the power of true faith. There are all things and gods in the world, and the gods have eternal life. The lifespan of all things is different. The tree spirits of the twisted forest can live for 1,000 years, the orcs on the grassland can live for 50 years, humans can live for 70 years, and desert wolves can live for 20 years. But no matter how many years, they will die in the end. Faced with death, creatures will be afraid and turn to worship and pray to the underworld in an attempt to gain eternal life. However, The power of faith can only be produced by humans. These beliefs fell into the underworld and turned into invisible reeds. Since the emergence of death, the belief in the underworld has emerged. Over time, it has formed such a large scale. If it is based on authority, the power of these beliefs can create 10 main gods. However, this is the power of the belief generated by believing in the underworld. Seth cannot use the power of these beliefs that do not belong to him, unless he obtains the authority of the underworld and becomes the lord of the underworld. I know there is a golden mountain, but I can only watch it. Seth sighed again, then looked at the sky and estimated the time. There is still 1 solar hour. Wait, Seth locked his eyes on the sky. No, to be precise, it is locked on the dim sun in the sky. Previously, Seth believed that there was a sun in the underworld, and the sun itself existed in the underworld and the earth. But now in his eyes, the not-so-bright sun in the sky is completely a condensation of faith. The belief in the sun, the condensed belief sun. Seth immediately thought of the gods of Rajang collecting the power of faith. Could it be that the power of those beliefs was eventually used to create the sun? Seth could not help but make such a guess. However, no one could prove his guess. After staring at the sun for a while, Seth looked away. He should leave. Being stuck in the underworld is not a good thing. However, when Seth came to the giant yellow sand bird and the young undead, he saw a scene that stunned him. White silk threads were wrapped around the giant yellow sand bird and the young undead, especially the young undead, all wrapped with white silk threads. However, the young undead and the giant yellow sand bird did not seem to notice it at all. They all looked at Seth respectfully, waiting for Seth's order. "Don't you feel the silk threads wrapped around your body?" Seth asked directly. "Master, no." The giant yellow sand bird replied immediately. The young undead looked at his whole body carefully, and then said, "My lord, I don't have any silk threads on my body." Seth tried to use his divine power to cut off some of the white silk threads. They were not condensed by the power of faith. However, the moment Seth's divine power touched the white silk threads, a series of memories appeared in front of his eyes. A boy from an ordinary family, he stood in front of the magic stall in the market, watching a man perform water magic with envy. After waiting for the performance to end, he found that the 30 copper coins he brought with him were all stolen. The memory stopped abruptly at the boy's angry expression. Seth frowned. The boy in his memory just now was the undead boy in front of him. So, the memory just now was the memory of the undead boy! What exactly is the white silk thread? Why can you see other people's memories when you touch it? When Seth was in doubt, he saw the silk thread move, as if it was tightened by something. The next moment, a white spider with cracks and the size of a palm appeared in front of Seth. The 8 compound eyes of the white spider stared at Seth excitedly. Seth didn't care about the white spider's emotions at this moment. He stared at the white spider. Authority. This white spider is the embodiment of authority. But, it is not a god. If authority is embodied into life, then this life is a god. But, the white spider does not have the breath of God. It only has the breath of authority. No, to be more precise, the breath of its authority is also unstable. "Master," the white spider suddenly cheered. The tender voice made Seth realize that this spider with concrete authority could communicate. He was about to ask about the situation. The white spider rushed directly into his heart. The divine power that isolated the death energy of the underworld was easily broken. Without giving Seth any time to react, a powerful force merged into his real name. During the fusion, scenes flashed before Seth's eyes. After a long while, the fusion ended, and no more scenes flashed before his eyes. However, Seth was shocked and speechless. Looking at the sky, Seth raised his hand and released countless white silk threads to wrap the young undead. In the blink of an eye, the boy was wrapped into a white giant cocoon. Then he sank into the golden flowing water and disappeared. After doing this, Seth quickly flew to the gate of the underworld again. At the same time, he took back all the giant yellow sand birds that were searching for the underworld. When he left the underworld and returned to the edge of the desert, the first ray of sunlight broke through the darkness. The light emanated from the horizon, which meant that Ra had defeated Apep again. It also meant that Ra was going to inspect the underworld. Also, The gods' council was getting closer. Set's own authority was about to be compromised. However, Set could not think about these things now. He opened the god's gate and returned to the temple, summoned the Ankh, and sealed the entire temple. On the top of the mountain, Nut and Keb took back the Ankh. A god's gate opened. Keb said, "Try not to speak at the gods' council. Our words may unite them." "I know," Nut nodded, and then said to the stars under the sky, "Dear Meets, the mother goddess and the father goddess will be back soon." In the temple built with flowers, vines, and giant trees, Isis came out of the god's gate without a trace of fishy smell on her body. Osiris went forward and hugged Isis, and asked curiously, "Did you go back to the temple of the twisted forest?" "Yes." Isis smiled and said, "It was attached to Apep's blood. It must be dealt with as soon as possible. So I went to my original temple to deal with it. At the same time, I also went to see the situation of the tree spirits in the twisted forest." "How are the tree spirits?" Osiris asked with concern. "There is still no new prophecy tree spirit born." Isis sighed and said, "The original prophecy tree spirit died too tragically." "That's good." Osiris comforted Isis and said, "Without the prophecy tree spirit, they will no longer be forced by the earth and sky gods." Chapter 45, Broken Destiny. Under the fig tree on the grassland, Sekhmet took back his Ankh, stood in front of the gate of God, and looked at Best, who was lying on the side. "Are you really not going back to Heliopolis with me?" Best, who looked like a black cat, nodded. "I still have some things to do. Besides, Heliopolis must be very boring now. Those chattering gods must be arguing about the desert." Sekhmet smiled and said, "They are just bored." Then he walked into the gate of God and left. After a moment, the gate of God filled with Sekhmet's breath disappeared. Best's bronze Ankh emerged from her forehead. It exuded a protective breath. "Hide in my Ankh. I can't take you to Heliopolis," Best said coldly. As soon as the voice fell, a papyrus wrapped in blood came out from the hair on Best's back. It floated to the side of the Ankh, but did not enter immediately. The blood on the surface of the book was moving, as if it was sniffing and exploring, or pausing to think about something. "What's wrong?" Best looked at the book in confusion. Somewhat uneasy, a childish voice came from the book. Best rolled her eyes and said, "Are you still afraid that I will hurt you?" The blood on the surface of the book was moving, and the childish voice replied, "I felt something had changed before." Hearing this, Best became nervous and asked hurriedly, "Is it about Kongsu?" "No," the book replied, "as long as Kongsu is not in trouble, other things are not important." Best breathed a sigh of relief and said. The book was silent for a while and said, "After the gods' meeting is over, continue to implement the plan. If it still doesn't work, you can only ask for help from the one who hides my existence." "Yeah," Best nodded. After getting the answer, the book shrank itself and entered the Ankh. Best injected divine power and swallowed an Ankh phantom into her stomach to be used to open the gate of God. Then she began to attach layers of protective divine power to the Ankh. After thousands of layers of divine power were attached, Best buried the Ankh deep underground. After doing this, Best turned and left the grassland. At the edge of the swamp, a temple built of vines and flowers stood. Nephthys stood in midair, overlooking the temple. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared at Nephthys' feet. At first glance, it seemed to be her shadow. "It looks a bit like the temple of Osiris. Help me hide the breath of life." Nephthys did not respond, but made a request in an imperative tone. "You are the goddess of fertility. It is easy to erase your breath of life." The black shadow's voice was a little dissatisfied. "I am not sure I can deceive Ra." Nephthys gave an explanation. Hearing this, the black shadow was silent for a moment and said, "Take it with you. It will offset the breath of life." A black dagger covered with black scales floated from the shadows and floated in front of Nephthys. Sensing the breath of death attached to the dagger, Nephthys was a little worried. "Will the breath of death really not be detected by Ra?" The shadow sneered. "The complete sun god is omniscient and omnipotent, but he is not, so you can rest assured." "What do you mean?" Nephthys was shocked and asked. However, the shadow dissipated and left. Yellow Sand Temple. Seth sat on the throne with an expressionless face. The Ankh floated in front of him, exuding the breath of the desert. For a long time, Seth's expression became complicated. He recalled the scenes that the white spider allowed him to glimpse. The first scene, Nephthys told Set with a happy face that she gave birth to their child Anubis. Not long after, the first god of the underworld was born. The second scene, Set seriously injured Nephthys and injured Anubis. Isis stood aside sadly. Osiris had no shame. The third scene, by the Nile River, Set killed the sleeping Osiris in the moonlight, and raised the sharp blade, cut Osiris into pieces and threw them into the Nile. Act 4. Isis wept and retrieved the body. She gave Osiris the power of life and resurrected him. Act 5. Set exuded the light of the sun. He rode Ra's ship of eternity and patrolled the earth. The gods stood on the earth and looked up at Set. Except for Isis, Nephthys and Anubis, they searched the Nile for the body of Osiris who had died again. Act 6. Osiris, who had been cut into pieces again, was found. However, a piece of the body was missing. The power of life was also taken away and could not be resurrected again. Isis resurrected Osiris briefly at the cost of her magic power. In this way, she gave birth to a new life. Act 7. Set drove a chariot and chased Isis. Nephthys, Shu, Tefnut, Keb and other gods helped Isis escape. Anubis mummified Osiris' body by the Nile River and sent it to the underworld. The underworld accepted Osiris because he was chosen by the first god of the underworld and gave him the power of Hades. Act 8. Isis brought Horus back to Heliopolis. Horus, who had the power of the sky, the sun, and power, challenged Set. Set and Horus had a decisive battle. In the end, he died under Horus's sword of the sun. All power dissipated and ceased to exist. Act 9. Set comforted Isis. Nephthys held the hand of a young man and looked at Osiris with love. Osiris had no guilt. Act 10. Under the moonlight, Set sadly killed Osiris and threw the body into the Nile. Act 11. Isis found Osiris' body and gave him the power of life. Osiris was resurrected and had the power of life. Act 12. Set exuded the breath of the sun, drove the 10,000-year ship, and patrolled the world. The gods stood on the earth, looking up at Set. Except for Isis, Nephthys, and Anubis, they searched for the body of Osiris who died again in the Nile. Act 13. Osiris, who was dismembered again, was found. However, a piece of the body was missing. The power of life was also taken away and could not be resurrected again. Isis temporarily resurrected Osiris at the cost of magic power. In this way, new life was born. Act 14. Set drove a chariot and chased Isis. Nephthys, Shu, Tefnut, Keb and other gods helped Isis escape. Anubis mummified Osiris' body by the Nile and sent it to the underworld. Because of the choice of the first god of the underworld accepted Osiris and gave him the power of Hades. Act 15. Isis brought Horus back to Heliopolis. Horus, who had the sky, the sun, and the power, challenged Set. Set and Horus had a decisive battle, finally died under Horus's sun's sword. All power dissipated and ceased to exist. The first 8 scenes were part of Set's original destiny. It was also a story that Set was familiar with. The latter was his fate after becoming Set. Even if he took the initiative to avoid Nephthys, but in the end, he still could not change the predetermined fate of death. Set calmed down all his shock and resentment at this moment, and was left with gratitude. He was grateful to Ammon and grateful for the gift he left behind. The white spider. It was also the broken power of destiny created by Ammon. Yes, that strange white spider is the power of destiny. When integrating the broken power, it allowed Set to glimpse the predetermined future. At the same time, Set also knew the origin of this broken power of destiny. Ammon used the lives of tens of millions of humans, plus their beliefs, to connect the spider web of destiny. In the end, the broken power of destiny was born. Before he was pulled down by divine punishment, he glimpsed the inevitable death. The broken power of destiny was hidden in the underworld. The broken fate comes from people's beliefs. It can use the power of faith in the underworld to hide itself. Therefore, although Ra has been patrolling the underworld, he has not discovered its existence. The white spider silk on a young dead soul in the underworld is the broken power of fate that maintains itself. It is not complete and cannot exist alone. It needs to be filled with human life. The reason why the dead souls wandering in the underworld have lost the ability to communicate is because they are all entangled in spider silk and immersed in recalling their lives. Set raised his hand and a white spider silk emerged. The breath of fate appeared. The next moment, Set put away the spider silk. All the breaths dissipated, including the desert breath emitted by Ankh. Set looked at the sunlight pouring into the temple and thought about the gods' council starting tomorrow. At that time, he would be forced to give up 70% of the desert territory. But it doesn't matter. The power of man is already in hand. Fate and human power complement each other. He can use fate to sanctify the land of the underworld under the cover of the faith of the underworld. What if he lost 70% of the desert territory? He owns the entire underworld, and the broken power of destiny no longer needs to hide in the underworld. With the power of man, the power of faith is no longer a force that pollutes his power. It can cover up the broken power of destiny. At the same time, it can also allow it to fill itself up little by little with the complex lives of the humans who are about to explode in number. The most important thing is that the power of destiny can change the predetermined destiny, which is the basis for his survival. This chapter is not written smoothly, and I will revise the details after it is published. It is recommended to reread it tomorrow during the day. Chapter 46 Decision. Seth wanted to live forever. He merged the memories of the original Seth, and naturally merged the memories of his lonely death on the throne. The powerlessness of death, the hatred for the source of this result, and the unwillingness to live freely for only 1,000 years, all merged. Therefore, he did not accept the predetermined fate. Anyone who prevented him from changing the predetermined fate would be killed by him. Seth breathed a sigh of relief and calmed down his complicated thoughts. Then, Seth raised his hand and destroyed the statue in the temple. The golden feather fell to the ground, exuding the breath of the sun. Seth sealed the golden feather with divine power. Then let the power of faith that came out of thin air fall on him. The power of emptiness had no sense of existence. It smoothly merged with the divine power generated by authority. In an instant, Seth felt that he was even more powerful and could even kill Apep. But soon, this feeling of power surge subsided. Seth understood that he suddenly obtained two authorities and merged the power of faith. For a while, he had not completely adapted to the change in power. After a while, there would be no such illusion. However, faith is not enough. To cover up his own power, he needed more and more. Seth waited silently, waiting for the power of faith. It was as if he had heard Seth's call. The blood-red power of faith suddenly appeared, and fell on Seth together with the power of blankness, merging with him. It was a sacrifice, and the tribe that believed in him performed the sacrifice. Closing his eyes, Seth used these powers to cover up the power of people and the broken destiny authority little by little. After waiting for the power of faith to end, the power that was generated out of thin air was only white. However, Seth had not yet covered himself up. The power of faith is still too little. Seth sighed. Faith must be human beings' belief in a specific existence, and only then will the power of faith be generated. The human god Amon, Thoth, the god of wisdom who records history, did not know. What's more, humans, they did not know that there was a human god Amon. No, even Hathor, who created them, they did not know. Humans only know the sun god and believe in the sun god. Therefore, Seth's identity as a human god cannot get the power of faith at all. However, this identity cannot be exposed. In short, it is not enough for a tribe to believe in the god of the desert. It seems that more people need to believe in him. Whether it is believing in the desert god, war, or power, it is not important. What is important is belief. The best way to gain belief is war. Seth understood this very well. At the same time, he also understood. The desert faded, the plains covered the earth, and the time came when the gods would protect mankind with their hearts. He, the desert god, would most likely be abandoned by humans. Fortunately, he still had the authority of seeing the light. Heliopolis City, the deserted city of gods, became lively again. The gods came back to participate in the gods' meeting. At the same time, they discussed the content of the gods' meeting, and who dared to propose to Ra that Seth had obstructed the increase in the number of humans. The gods who had grudges with Seth were discussed one by one. However, These gods denied it. Sitting on the top of the huge stone temple burning with flames, Sekhmet listened to the undisguised discussions in the city and looked at the yellow sand temple not far away. The temple exuded the breath of the desert, however, there was no owner of the temple in it. Next to the yellow sand temple, Isis and Osiris, who also came, were worried about Set. After the gods' meeting, "Take Set back to our temple." Isis frowned and said. Osiris nodded, "I think so too." After that, Isis walked outside the temple and listened to the discussion of the gods who had already arrived in the city. She still wanted to find out the god who dared to report Set to Ra. Although Isis knew that Set's matter was the general trend, however, this matter should not be accelerated by anyone. The informer had better pray that he is not afraid of pain. Isis sneered and continued to listen to the discussion of the gods, trying to find some clues. However, the arrival of an unexpected visitor interrupted Isis's plan. "Long time no see, god of life." The perfect facial features, perfect figure, and perfect clothes are the goddess of beauty Hathor. "Long time no see." Isis responded politely and asked, "What's the matter?" "Seeds." Hathor took out a crystal ball filled with black seeds. "I just cultivated it. I want to talk to Osiris." Isis used her divine power to create another Isis, letting her continue to listen, and then said, "Let's go in and talk." "Okay," Hathor replied with a smile. Osiris, who was thinking about the wheat ears, saw Hathor coming and came to greet him. "Thank you for the seeds you sent last time." Hathor smiled and said, "You're welcome. The seeds have been given to humans to plant." Osiris said excitedly, "Those seeds themselves have a higher yield than ordinary seeds. The shortage of food will improve soon." "That's good," Hathor said, handing the crystal containing the seeds to Osiris. "This is the new seed I cultivated. You can cultivate a large amount and then give it to humans." "Okay." Osiris carefully took the crystal. Isis, who was standing by, asked the question that troubled her. "Hathor, why do you care so much for humans?" "Because of love," Hathor replied. "As a matter of course, I love humans. So I want them to be happy and not be overwhelmed by sorrow. The god Ra has sent down another oracle to increase the number of humans. I can also care for them, but I won't be blamed by the gods. After all, caring for humans will destroy the balance, especially the balance of the desert." Hearing this, Isis's face flashed with displeasure. Osiris said, "Set is not so petty." "I know." Hathor smiled brightly. "I know I misunderstood Set. I also know that Set is not a cold, warlike, and domineering god. So, I want to find him to express my apologies all the time. Can you help me find Set?" Sincere, flawless words. Isis looked at the perfect Hathor and always felt strange. Osiris was thoughtful and said, "Set has not arrived yet. I will write to you when he arrives." "Okay." Hathor heard this, a little disappointed, and said, "Thank you." Then Hathor left the temple. Isis looked at Hathor's back and said, "She is so strange. I think she admires Set." Osiris touched his chin and said, "Admire?" Isis' eyes widened. "How do you know?" "Expression," Osiris explained. "If she admires someone, you can tell from her expression." "But how many times has she met me?" Isis still didn't believe it. This chapter will also be revised. Chapter 47, Debate in the Divine Council. "That might be love at first sight." Osiris smiled. Isis didn't believe it. Besides, she remembered that her younger brother fell in love with Best. "Forget it. Let her worry about it." Not intending to get involved in Set's private affairs, Isis continued to listen to the gods' discussion. The second solar day. At this moment, the sun has risen. It means that Apep has died again, and the gods' meeting is about to begin. The gods went to the pantheon in an orderly manner. Isis stood in front of the temple, her face full of worry, because Set had not arrived yet. Osiris comforted Isis, "Don't worry, he won't be late." At this time, Nephthys came over and asked with concern, "Is brother Set not here yet?" "Yes." Osiris nodded. Nephthys wanted to say something, but Isis saw Set not far away, and the worry on her face disappeared. "My younger brother is here." Isis breathed a sigh of relief. "It's good that he's here." Osiris also breathed a sigh of relief. Although he had been comforting Isis, he was really afraid that Set would be late. Nephthys looked at Set, unconsciously placed her hand on her abdomen, and a look of regret flashed in her eyes. Set also saw Isis. "Osiris, Nephthys, and came over to say hello. "Sister, brother, and sister, brother, I know you are unhappy," Isis said. "But don't lose your temper in the God's council. The oracle of God Ra cannot be violated. As for the God who reported you to God Ra, sister will help you find out." "I understand, sister," Seth smiled and said, "Thank you." This is a heartfelt thank you. Isis always cares about and helps him sincerely. Thinking of this, Seth's eyes moved to Osiris. In the predetermined fate, Osiris stood on the opposite side of him. Even if he avoided Nephthys, he would still be against Osiris. Why? Jealousy? Okay, let's go into the pantheon. Osiris smiled at Seth and said. Seth suppressed his extra thoughts and followed Isis, Osiris, and Nephthys to the pantheon. When he entered the pantheon, Seth was watched by the gods. There were gloating, ridicule, sympathy, and curiosity in these eyes. Seth ignored them, walked to the throne and sat down, looking down at more than 2,000 gods. There were only dozens of main gods of the same rank as him. There were more than 2,000 upper and lower gods who needed to look up to him. As long as he was still the main god, he could ignore the upper and lower gods. As for the main gods, when he turned the land of the underworld into sand, he would have nothing to fear. However, Seth looked at the highest throne with a trace of trepidation. The reason why he was late was that he realized that the power of faith in the water-grass oasis alone was not enough for him to cover up the broken destiny and the two powers of man. Therefore, Seth took the initiative to find hundreds of oases for protection and blood sacrifice. In the end, he got enough power of faith to cover up the two powers. But can this cover-up be hidden from Ra? With the example of Ammon and the power of broken destiny hiding from Ra, Seth felt that it was possible. However, he still couldn't help but worry. While Seth was thinking about this, Thoth stood up and said loudly, "Silence, the gods' council is about to begin." The gods who were whispering stopped talking and looked up at the golden throne at the top of the pantheon. Suddenly, a golden sun penetrated the dome of the temple and landed on the highest throne, turning into a goddess. She wore a red gold sun disk engraved with the sun god's pattern on her head and a long dress with a red sun pattern. The red color was like the eyes of two red suns, which seemed to be able to burn everything. On her neck was a red gold wezek engraved with the sun god's pattern. In her right hand, she held a red gold three-section staff, and in her left hand, she held a red gold ankh. The supreme god Ra, the god of the sun. Thoth stood in front of the throne and shouted loudly, "The gods' council, begin." Then Thoth sat down. The gods looked up at Ra, waiting for him to speak. Ra looked down at the gods and finally set his sights on Seth. "God of the desert, have you stopped the gods from blessing humans?" Seth was relieved by Ra's straightforward question. This proved that Ra did not see through the cover of faith. However, Seth showed a sad and aggrieved look on his face. He said, "God Ra, this is slander. I have never stopped any god from blessing humans. I even expect the gods to change the desert that is not suitable for human habitation. But some gods preach that I do not allow changes. As a result, they cannot bless humans. But in fact, some gods are unwilling to use their divine power to change the desert. Some gods do not even do the simplest thing of opening up a tributary of the Nile River into the desert. I feel very sad about this. They actually treat the oracle as nothing, and they blame everything on me. And they bypassed the god of order and slandered me in front of God Ra. God Ra, I am wronged." After saying this, Seth's face looked even more aggrieved, and even tears appeared in his eyes. Isis almost laughed out loud as she watched Seth's performance. She knew her younger brother's character too well, and she also understood what a silent threat was. Best stared with cat eyes, feeling that Seth's lies were becoming more and more proficient. Then she thought of how she had believed Seth's lies before, and her face turned ugly. Seeing Seth's face, Shu was helpless as he wrote a letter to some gods who depended on the desert to argue with him and try to stop the desert from being changed. The remaining main gods also had different expressions. The upper gods and lower gods were even more surprised. Then they were dissatisfied. "And you are still wronged!" They all felt that if they did anything to change the desert's land form, they would face Set's revenge. Wind chime flower god Lano retorted indignantly, "God Ra, the desert god is lying. He has merged with the desert more than once. It is to scare us who want to change the desert. Seth took note of Lano in his heart, but still looked aggrieved. I am searching for monsters in the desert, although the monsters will avoid oases and temples, but they will attack humans walking in the desert. Killing them is also for the safety of humans. Not only that, I also protected the human oasis. Besides, have I ever had a conflict with the god who changed the desert? These words choked Lano. Dragon blood tree god Nis said, God Ra, the desert god is indeed searching for and killing monsters, and he protected the human oasis. Hearing this, Seth felt even more aggrieved. The lower gods and the upper gods also understood. They had no solid evidence to prove that Seth did not allow the desert to be changed. If there was a god who dared to change the desert, he would be beaten half to death by Seth. That would be evidence that could be used to incriminate Seth now. Unfortunately, no one wants to be retaliated by Seth. At this time, Wadjet, the lower-ranking serpent god with a human body and a snake head, spoke up. Since the god of desert cares so much about humans, why not take the initiative to change the desert landscape? Hathor chuckled and said, venomous snakes are harmful to humans. Will you take the initiative to kill all the venomous snakes? A sharp rebuttal. The gods looked at Hathor sideways. Hathor, with a perfect smile, said, God Ra, I think the god of desert did not stop the gods from changing the desert. The wheat seeds I gave to humans have been cultivated by the god of agriculture and have been planted in the desert. If the god of desert does not allow the desert to be changed and does not protect humans, my wheat seeds will not survive. Chapter 48 Shu's request. Isis looked at Hathor, with perfect facial features, perfect head-to-body ratio, and perfect clothing and accessories. Most importantly, she supported Seth. It seemed that it was not bad for Hathor to marry his younger brother. Thinking of this, Isis lowered her head and glanced at the wind chime flower god and the snake god, her eyes full of coldness. Seth was a little surprised by Hathor's support, but after a little thought, he understood. Hathor thought her calculations were successful, thinking that he was her lover Amon who had died and resurrected. Naturally, she would stand up and support him. Hathor's words also made the gods who wanted to target Seth stop talking temporarily. Pulling the perfect facial features showed a warm smile. Don't be wronged, my child. Lies and slander are like bubbles, and they will eventually be punctured. I trust you, and the gods trust you too. Seth wiped away the tears that flowed out, and said with emotion, even if there are slanderers, the eyes of the gods are bright. The wind chime flower god and the snake god trembled with anger. The lower gods and upper gods who were not attached to the desert were also very angry. The lie has been clarified, so the matter of changing the desert landform should also be carried out. Keb suddenly said. Seth looked over and saw Kebnut smiling brightly. I have discussed this matter with the god of order. Seth spoke immediately. The desert occupies 80% of the land, which is not conducive to the increase of human population. I am willing to temporarily abandon 70% of the desert territory, hand it over to the god of life and the god of plants to change it into a plain landform, until the human soul is enough to support the revival and growth of the underworld and become a world like the human world. Abandoning the territory is a foregone conclusion. Then he will take the initiative to do this, and temporarily hand over these territories to Isis and Osiris who are good to him. After all, apart from Isis and Osiris, other gods can also use their authority to change the landform. If it is handed over to the gods designated by Ra, if it benefits the gods who are hostile to him, Seth will be disgusted to death. Isis sighed silently. Getting 70% of the territory is of great help to her and Osiris. However, she was unwilling to let Seth lose himself. But this matter could not be changed. Osiris also had a sad face. Nephthys' eyes stayed on Osiris, with an unclear expression. Kebnut had already expected it, and were not surprised. Sekhmet had a look of regret. Beth had pity in her eyes. Hathor tried her best to control herself and not look at Seth. Thoth recorded the contents of the gods' meeting. The main gods such as Mot and Tefnut had no expression on their faces. God Ra, the god of the desert has indeed discussed it with me. Shu opened his mouth and said, very good. Ra smiled with satisfaction, as Seth said, The matter of changing the landform will be handed over to Isis and Osiris. Everything was settled at this moment. Most of the lower gods and higher gods felt very happy at this moment. They were just angry, but Set really lost his authority. Set sat on the throne, looking at the lower gods and higher gods who were hostile to him, and silently remembered them in his heart. Thoth saw that God Ra did not speak. He knew that the meeting of the gods was about to end, and was about to stand up. God Ra. Shu suddenly spoke. The god's eyes fell on Shu. Shu looked at God Ra and said respectfully, "The god of desert voluntarily gave up 70% of the desert. The result may be serious injury, which will take a lot of time to heal. I want to ask God Ra to give the god of desert new authority. With the support of new divine power, the god of desert can avoid the tragic situation of serious injury." After the words fell, the gods were in an uproar. Even Set was shocked. He had thought about asking Ra to give new authority, but he was never 100% sure. After learning from Shu that Thoth had also been rejected, and after getting the authority of human and broken destiny, he had given up this idea. Why did Shu mention this? The lower gods and upper gods who felt happy just now panicked. They wanted to refute, but there was no reason to refute. After all, Set took the initiative to sacrifice himself first. It was not Set who proposed to get new authority. Tefnut spoke at this time. God Ra, Set is indeed worthy of new authority. Thoth was silent, waiting for Ra's response. Mot said, 70% of the desert, from the principle of fair trade, is worthy of new authority. Isis, Osiris, and Nephthys agreed. Contrary to Set's expectation, Kebun did not object. The main gods such as Beth and Sekhmet did not express their opinions. Ra swept through the gods, taking in the expressions of all the gods, and finally looked at Shu. Having a fourth authority will impact Set's damaged true name. Slowing down the speed of changing the desert landscape can prevent Set from being seriously injured. Yes. Shu lowered his head and replied. Disappointment flashed in Set's eyes. Sure enough, Ra would not give him new authority. The attitude of the main god was just as he had just stated. Supporters were disappointed, non-supporters were happy, and bystanders were expressionless. The upper gods and lower gods became excited again. Thoth stood up and shouted, "The gods' council is over." Ra turned into a sun, passed through the dome of the pantheon, and left. The upper and lower gods also began to leave quickly. They were afraid of being blocked by Set. Set did not intend to block them, but just wrote down the name of the god who jumped the most happily. Revenge is a lifelong thing. The life of the immortal gods is forever. Isis came over and comforted Set. Brother, we will slow down the transformation of the desert landform. Also, come back to the temple with us. I don't want you to be seriously injured like before and have to sleep in the temple. Yes, come back with us. Osiris also came over and said. Seth smiled and said, Sister, brother, don't worry, as long as you slow down, I won't be seriously injured. But I can't go back to that temple with you. The gods such as the dragon blood tree god and the sea buckthorn god rely on the desert. Now the desert is going to be changed, and they have to move too. I'm going back to mark the location of 10% of the desert. Seeing Seth's insistence, Isis knew he would not change his decision. I understand, be careful. Okay. Seth nodded. After saying that, Seth was about to leave. Hathor, who was not far away, had a flash of anxiety in her eyes, but she didn't dare to show it. Suddenly, she thought of an excuse. Seth, wait, Hathor shouted. Seth stopped, looked at Hathor and asked, what's wrong? Thank you for helping mankind. Hathor smiled and took out a 7-color flower seed. The flower I cultivated. I hope the fragrance of the flower can ease the pain you feel when you lose your power. Seth smiled slightly, took the flower seed and said, I like the color of the seed. Thank you, Hathor. Hathor's perfect smile became even more perfect. As long as you like it. Best looked at Hathor and couldn't help but whispered to Sekhmet beside her, why do I feel like Hathor is weird? No. Sekhmet shook his head. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo fanfic novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49. Sobek comes to the door. Best felt that she must have lost her mind, asking such a question to Sekhmet, whose mind was filled with nothing but fighting. The other gods also noticed the strange atmosphere between Hathor and Set. Set kept a gentle smile and looked at Hathor gently. "I'll leave first." "Yeah," Hathor responded with satisfaction. "Walk out of the Pantheon and leave the city of Heliopolis." Set didn't put away his smile until he opened the door of God and returned to his own temple. Does he admire the goddess of beauty Hathor? No. Set would not be moved just by Hathor's perfect appearance. It's just that there is the supreme god, and gods are not allowed to kill each other. Then, Set can only make use of Hathor. A main god who existed before the creation of the world can always play her role. For example, what happened in the gods' council just now. However, Hathor knows Amon well enough. Set doesn't know Amon, so how to perfectly deceive Hathor needs to be studied carefully. But now is not the time to study. Suppressing his complicated thoughts, Set began to think about how to draw the boundaries of the abandoned desert and the problem of the power of faith. At this time, many bloody faith powers were generated and fell on Set. There were tribes that believed in him performing blood sacrifices. At first reaction, Set thought it was the water-grass oasis. Only their tribe frequently performed blood sacrifices. As for the hundreds of tribes he had just found, they probably needed several years to recuperate. After thinking again and again, Set decided to go and see the water-grass oasis first. If they were not stupid, Set intended to support them and let them plunder faith for him. After making a decision, Set left the temple and summoned the giant yellow sand bird to go to the water-grass oasis. Not long after Set left, several gods came to the yellow sand temple: cactus god Thorns, sand vine god Moat, stone flower god Brit, sandworm god Nice. The four lower gods looked into the temple. There was no breath of Set inside. Nice, who was wearing a sandworm crown, a wess around her neck, and a yellow and blue skirt, spoke up. "The god of the desert is not here." Brit, who was wearing a crown woven with stone flowers and a white long skirt, was anxious. "Didn't the god of the desert define the boundaries of the desert? Why isn't he waiting for us in the temple?" Thorns, who had green skin and a crown shaped like a cactus flower, laughed when he heard this. "Wait for us to arrive? Why do you think the god of desert will discuss with us? With his personality, he will only notify us after demarcating the scope." Wearing a sand vine crown and a blue skirt, Mert asked curiously, "If you think so, why do you still come to the desert temple?" Hearing this, GC's smile became even wider. "Of course, I came to express my attitude. In the past, the desert was vast and boundless, and we each occupied a piece of territory. Without being hostile to each other, we could all become strong among the lower gods. Now that the desert has been reduced by 70%, our territory will be redivided. Who do you think will divide our new territory?" The three lower gods were silent. GC smiled disdainfully and said, "Don't pretend. You have the same idea as me. Otherwise, you wouldn't come here so happily." Those gods who are counting on the god of order don't even think about the performance of the god of order in the gods' council. In the end, it was the god of desert who demarcated the territory. The three gods were a little embarrassed when their little thoughts were exposed. But after a moment of embarrassment, they were relieved. Nice laughed even more. Seeing him laughing so happily, GC was puzzled. "Is it so funny?" "You said it's funny." Nice shook his head and gloated. "Do you still remember that the god of desert asked us to talk to the god of order about the desert territory?" "I remember," the three gods said in unison. Before Nice could continue, Brit reacted and suddenly realized, "You were laughing at the god of tequila." "Yes." Nice nodded. "She will definitely be retaliated by the god of desert." The other two gods agreed with Nice. At the same time, they were also glad that they were not as stupid as the god of tequila. Set stood at the edge of the desert and took back the giant yellow sand bird. This is not an oasis of water and grass, but the junction of grassland and desert. He came here because Sobek was calling him. Set was also helpless about this unkillable crocodile. "Brother, Have you successfully integrated the authority of man? Sobek's excited voice came from the tributary of the Nile River in the grassland. Successful, Seth admitted frankly. At the same time, Seth was also curious whether Sobek knew about the existence of broken fate. That's great, Sobek said excitedly. You should accumulate the power of faith as soon as possible, then kill Apep and bring back his body. Even though it was not the first time he heard this request, Seth's mouth twitched. Apep, an immortal demon snake that could compete with the sun god of creation. In Sobek's mouth, it was like a small snake that could be found everywhere and could be killed with a light poke. I can't do it. Seth resisted the urge to rush into the tributary and beat Sobek, and said, "Why?" Sobek was puzzled at first, and then began to question and accuse Seth. "Do you want to betray your mother? Don't forget, it was my mother and I who helped you get the human authority, and helped you avoid Hathor's calculations." Seth was helpless and asked, "Did you forget something?" "What is it?" Sobek paused. "God Ra." Seth pointed to the sun in the sky and said, "God Ra watched me use the power of faith to completely kill Apep. Don't you think he can guess that I have obtained human authority? I obtained human authority behind the back of God Ra. I am afraid I will be the next Hamon." Sobek was choked. Seth tentatively said, "Why don't you let your mother take action, kill, or defeat God Ra? Then I will kill Apep openly." "This method won't work." Sobek directly rejected it and said, "Also, it's not just my mother, it's also your mother. We are brothers." Hearing this, Seth showed a disappointed expression on his face. In fact, Seth guessed that Sobek would refuse. If Sobek and his mother could defeat Ra head-on, they would not shrink and fey him. As for Sobek's correction of his statement about his mother, Seth automatically ignored it. Having a mother goddess nut is already tormenting enough. He would not find another mother when he has nothing to do. "Ah, brother," Sobek suddenly exclaimed, "I just remembered that I forgot to tell you clearly." "What?" Seth was used to Sobek's surprise, so he asked calmly. "You saw the reed marsh formed by faith in the underworld?" Sobek said firmly. Seth nodded. "I saw it." Chapter 50, Raging Sobek. "Does that reed marsh cover the entire underworld?" Sobek asked anxiously. Seth shook his head. "No, it just covers most of the underworld's scorched earth." Although because of the urgency of time and the reason for leaving the underworld quickly after obtaining the broken power of destiny, he did not take the whole reed marsh into consideration. However, he had looked at the reed marsh at first. Near the sticks, the scorched earth of the underworld can still be seen. This shows that the reed marsh did not cover the entire underworld's scorched earth. "Not completely covered?" Sobek looked incredulous and deceived. "Yeah," Seth nodded and said, "Any questions?" "Brother, tell me first." Sobek did not answer Seth's question, but asked very anxiously, "Can you absorb the power of faith in the underworld?" "No," Seth sighed. He also regretted that he could not get the power of faith in the underworld, because the power of faith that has survived to this day was born from human belief in the underworld. Only Hades, the master of the underworld, can perfectly integrate and use it. Of course, the premise is that Hades is not afraid of the power of faith polluting the authority. And Seth could only use the broken power of fate to slightly mobilize the power of faith. "Damn it." Sobek's voice became sharp and roared. "What's wrong?" Seth asked Sobek. However, there was no answer. Seth once again suppressed the idea of going to Fayum and beating Sobek up, and quietly waited for Sobek's answer. He didn't believe that Sobek would not answer. If Sobek really dared, then it would be a good time to cut off contact. Sobek, who possessed strange powers, and his mother, Seth didn't want to have much contact. "Iman deceived us," Sobek said in a low voice, before Ra brought down divine punishment and wiped him out. Iman took the initiative to find his mother and proposed a deal. "What deal?" Seth asked with a frown. "Save Hathor when she is facing death," Sobek said. "He said he would die. This is inevitable, but he is willing to leave the authority of man after his death. Wait for you, my brother, to integrate the authority of man. At the same time, tell mother that by integrating the authority of man, her own authority will not be polluted by the power of faith. The huge power of faith accumulated in the underworld by then can also be used by the human god. Then it will be easy to kill Apep." Mother agreed to the deal and made a vow. But Amon lied. "You can't use the power of faith in the underworld at all." "Damned human god," He must have been playing tricks and made a false oath. Although Seth was surprised that Amon had tampered with the oath, he was shocked by what happened. Amon said that I will merge the authority of man? Yes, Sobek said in a low voice. He said that he used the power of faith to make a prophecy. Only you can merge the authority he left behind. Only with the authority of man can we find the power of faith hidden in the underworld. At this moment, the dead Amon can almost be equated with Ra in Set's heart. Amon existed at the beginning of creation, millions of years ago. At that time, he knew that he would exist, and he also left a broken authority of destiny in the underworld. It seemed that everything was within his expectations. He is worthy of being the man-god who created a broken destiny. However, Set was also terrified. Amon, who had arranged everything properly, is he really dead? Will he be calculated if he accepted the broken authority of destiny? Is Amon using himself so that he can be resurrected one day? A series of assumptions terrified Set. The joy of obtaining the authority of man, the broken authority of destiny, and being able to quietly turn the underworld into sand is gone. Seth took a deep breath, trying to calm his fear, and said, Sobek, Amon has calculated to this extent. I doubt he is still alive, or he has some other means of resurrection. We must get rid of him, otherwise we may be calculated again. Now the only one we can rely on is Sobek's mysterious mother. He will not be resurrected, Sobek said faintly. Why are you so sure? Seth was stunned. Because Mother believes that Amon has glimpsed fate, Sobek explained, glimpsed the existence of fate, and he is not allowed to live. When Ra wiped out Faoum and Amon, Mother was also erasing Amon's existence. The power of the sun plus the Mother's erasure, under this power, Amon cannot exist. Hearing this, Seth understood one thing. Sobek's mother believed that Amon had glimpsed fate, but did not know that he had woven the authority of broken fate. In this way, Sobek and his mother did not know the existence of broken fate. While he was relieved, Seth was still worried and asked, why don't you ask Mother to check it out? What if Amon left some tricks? Humphrey, Sobek snorted coldly, don't doubt Mother's power. Besides, even if you don't trust Mother, the power of the sun that Ra possesses is not fake. It is enough to kill Amon completely. Seth didn't say anything else. Sobek's attitude showed that he didn't think Amon was still alive. As for the mysterious mother, Seth didn't count on it. He decided that he would weave the power of fate again. Amon could do it, so there was no reason why he couldn't do it. What's more, the number of humans will increase dramatically in the near future. Weave a new power of fate to replace the power of fate left by Amon. After making a decision, Seth said, I can't use the power of faith in the underworld. I can't kill Apep either. I know. Sobek sighed and said, I will tell Mother about this. Mother must have other ways. I'll come to you when the time comes. Yeah, Seth responded casually. Then, there was no sound at all in the tributary of the Nile on the plain. Seth wiped out all the smell here first, and then left. Water and grass oasis. Damses walked quickly into the sacrificial temple. Countless lights were lit in the temple, illuminating the interior of the temple. The walls and stone pillars of the temple were painted with desert patterns. Passing through the corridor, Damses came to the door of the sacrificial side hall. The two tribal warriors immediately saluted. Master Priest. Damses nodded slightly and said, how is the High Priest? Master Chiowo said that the High Priest only has half a day left. The tribal warrior on the right answered truthfully. Hearing this, Damses sighed, then pushed the door and entered the side hall. The furnishings in the hall were simple. The old priest was lying on the bed with a sallow face. Damses walked over and said, High Priest. The old priest opened his eyes, saw Damses, smiled and said, It's Damses. Why do you want to overthrow your life prophecy? Damses didn't understand. According to the High Priest's physical condition, he can still live for another 20 to 30 years. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.